Rebuilding the Immortal Cultivation family. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Action. What are you doing? Li Zhirui asked with a gloomy face, and at the same time, he stopped Li Zhirui who was about to come out. Do it. The three ignored Li Zhirui and cast spells very straightforwardly, trying to kill Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui here. You come to operate the spirit ship. Li Zhirui handed over the control to Li Zhirui and faced the three foundation building monks alone. Li Zhirui's strength was not bad, but it was still a bit reluctant to deal with the three foundation building monks. It didn't take long for him to fall into disadvantage and looked a little embarrassed. Li Zhirui didn't quite understand at first why Li Zhirui didn't call Li Zhirui out, and even didn't summon the spirit beast, and fought against the three people alone. But soon, Li Zhirui guessed his purpose. Li Zhirui wanted to design the other party, so that Li Zhirui could be used as a surprise soldier to find an opportunity to kill the three people. But now under the joint attack of the other party, Li Zhirui was stretched to the limit for a while, and had to do his best to ensure that he would not be injured. This embarrassed appearance also paralyzed the three people, making them think that they could easily take down Li Zhirui. King Kong. Huge stone torrent. Just as the three people pressed forward step by step and only focused on attacking, Li Zhirui suddenly shouted, and the spiritual beast bag on his waist opened instantly. A huge ape flew out of it, and then a large number of boulders in the air condensed, forming a yellow torrent in the blink of an eye, whistling towards the three people. The spiritual beast of Li Zhirui's contract, the second-level stone ape, is strong and thick-skinned, and is good at earth-based magic. It is the best among the second-level spiritual beasts cultivated by the Li family. And Li Zhirui's stone ape, under his careful cultivation, has also reached the middle stage of foundation building. At the same time as King Kong appeared, Li Zhirui, who had been hiding in the cabin, also took action. A green light shot out and bypassed the three people in a breath, so fast that the other party could not react. The green-scaled snake, a second-level spiritual beast cultivated by Li Zhirui, can fly into the air. Its speed is comparable to lightning, and it has a poisonous toxicity that can dissolve magic power. Not good. The three of them felt their hearts sink suddenly when they saw Li Zhirui appear, but what was even more frightening was that the other side actually had a foundation-building spirit beast in their hands. The situation was reversed in an instant, and they became the weaker party. Because of Li Zhirui's sudden appearance, the three of them were so frightened that they did not notice a small wound on their bodies. Run. In fact, there was no need to remind them. When Li Zhirui, a foundation-building cultivator, appeared, they knew that the ambush had failed. Now it depends on whether they have a way to escape. Want to escape? Li Zhirui smiled coldly and said, too late. Before he finished speaking, he immediately released the spell that he had prepared for a long time. The huge stone torrent condensed by the stone ape instantly changed its form and turned into an airtight stone prison, trapping the three people in it. King Kong, stone spear. With Li Zhirui's order, hard and sharp stone spear suddenly appeared in the stone prison, forcing the three people to defend themselves first. While the three people's magic power was running rapidly, it also brought about the poison of the green-scaled snake. Before they could deal with the stone spear, they were horrified to find that there was little magic power left in their bodies. What's going on? The Zhang family monks shouted in panic. They originally thought that they could easily take down Li Zhirui, but who could have thought that in just half an hour, the situation would be reversed and they would become the fish on the chopping board. Seeing this, Li Zhirui knew that the poison of the green-scaled snake had penetrated into the bodies of the three people, and they had no power to resist, so he took action to remove the stone prison. Li Zhirui, who had not taken any action, suddenly cast a spell, and several vines that grew out of thin air tied up the three people tightly, and then reached out to pull them onto the spirit boat. Li Zhirui controlled the spirit boat to speed away, but he did not return to the family. Instead, he found a deserted island and parked the spirit boat. Instead of interrogating the three monks, he asked Li Zhirui what he thought about this fight. You and Tingu's cooperation with the spirit beast is really tacit. This was Li Zhirui's most profound impression. That's one point, Li Zhirui nodded and pointed out, as a family cultivator, you don't have to show off your personal abilities like a casual cultivator. You must know how to cooperate with the clan members and use the least amount of mana to achieve the best results. In addition, why should Shi Ting and I be so cautious? It is to prevent the other party from causing harm to us when they are desperate. Seeing that Li Zhirui had taken his words to heart, Li Zhilian nodded secretly, turned around and walked in front of the three people, transformed the spiritual energy in the air into a big hand, and pulled off the black cloth covering the faces of the three people. Shi Ting, have you seen them? Li Zhilian frowned slightly. He always felt that these three people looked familiar. Seeing Li Zhiting shook his head, Li Zhilian did not ask any more questions, and directly took off the storage bags on the waists of the three people, forcibly breaking their spiritual consciousness to see if he could find something that indicated their identities. Zhang family, Li Zhilian's eyes flashed with a fierce look, and said, "Are you a cultivator of the Zhang family of Redwood Island?" Li Zhirui was slightly shocked. Why did the Zhang family attack the Li family for no reason? Are those two also cultivators of the Zhang family? You two are also cultivators of the Zhang family. As soon as the words came out, Li Zhilian shook his head and denied it. The Zhang family only had 3 foundation building cultivators in total, and it was impossible to send them all out at once. Otherwise, if there was any accident, without the foundation building cultivators, the Zhang family would probably be destroyed on the vast ocean. Li Zhilian and Li Zhiting worked together to open the storage bags of the other two people. After seeing the marks of the other two families inside, their faces suddenly became cloudy. The He family. The Zhang family. Li Zhilian used his magic power to lift a person and shouted, "Why did you 3 families join forces? If these 3 families were to deal with the Li family alone, Li Zhilian would not be so nervous. Because they were not as strong as the Li family, but if the 3 families formed an alliance, the situation of the Li family would become extremely bad." Haha, the man saw Li Zhilian's ugly face, and his mood suddenly improved. He said fearlessly, "Guess, Pa." The spiritual hand slapped him directly, and Li Zhilian threw the man to the ground like throwing garbage. "You two go to the market, I'll go back to Banyan Island and tell the clan leader about this." Li Zhilian couldn't interrogate in front of Li Zhirui, and the matter was of great importance, so he had to tell Li Zhiting as soon as possible. Li Zhiting nodded and said, "Okay, I'll tell Shiren about this." Li Zhirui, who had become a background board, suddenly said, "You saw that the Li family's business was booming and felt that it was a threat to you, so you teamed up to ambush secretly, right?" One of them changed his face slightly. He didn't expect that a small key training cultivator would grasp the key point as soon as he opened his mouth. Sure enough, Li Zhirui saw the other party's reaction and knew that his guess was right. As early as when the news of Yun Shanglao's booming business was passed back to Banyan Island, Li Zhirui was worried that someone would be jealous and secretly target the Li family. But this was just Li Zhirui's guess and worry, and it was not easy to tell the family directly, mainly because Li Zhirui himself felt it was unlikely. He did mention it a few times when chatting with Li Xiao, and the other party also thought that Li Zhirui was overthinking it. After all, before the Li family, there were shops with very good business in the market. Thank you for the reward from Qi Lao. Chapter 27, Enemy. How did you guess it? Li Zhilian was not in a hurry to go back, and asked with interest. A big tree attracts the wind, and the wind shakes the tree, Li Zhirui said. The 2 businesses of the family in the market are so hot, and a large amount of spiritual stones are earned every day, which must be jealous, not to mention the existence of the family. It is a threat to these 3 families. Now that the family is developing so well, they must take action to stop it. Can they just watch the family rise and then swallow up the 3 of them? Li Zhilian looked suddenly enlightened, but the 3 people looked ashen. If Li Zhirui had not guessed it, perhaps they could still survive for a while, but now that the reason has been guessed by him, they have no value in existence. In fact, there is no problem with the calculations of the 3 families. If Li Zhilian went to the market alone today, even if he had the stone ape to help him, he would eventually be injured or even die. But today happened to be the day when Li Zhiting and Li Shiren took over, so it can only be said that they were unlucky. There is another very important reason. The surrounding forces did not know that the Li family was once a vassal force of the beast-taming sect, and they did not know that most of the Li family's cultivators had cultivated a spirit beast, and underestimated the strength of the Li family's cultivators. Okay, you go to the market first. I will take the people back to the Banyan Island and lock them up to see how the clan leader will deal with them. The matter is of great importance, and Li Zhilian cannot solve the matter privately. Don't be complacent. It's not just our 3 families who want to take action against you, someone shouted hysterically. Li Zhilian's face sank, but no matter what means he used to interrogate, the three people just insisted on not saying anything. Instead, they looked at the surprise on their faces and laughed heartily. The three of them split into two groups. Li Zhirui took Li Zhirui to the market as usual, and Li Zhilian blew away all the breath of the crowd on the way back to the family, so as to prevent the families of the three people from finding the exact evidence of the Li family's action later. Although there was no evidence, they could know that it was the Li family who took action, but at least they could not take the evidence to Yuan Mingzong to rule on the matter. Aren't you going to the market to settle the account? Why are you back so soon? Li Zhirui asked doubtfully, looking at Li Zhilian who suddenly appeared in front of him. In order to prevent more tribesmen from knowing about this, Li Zhilian deliberately hid the three people in a corner of the island, and did not directly catch them to see Li Zhirui. I will explain to my second brother later, you come with me first. After saying that, Li Zhilian flew towards the place where the people were hidden, and Li Zhirui quickly cast a spell to catch up. When he saw the three foundation-building monks who fell into deep sleep, he frowned and said, "This is." Li Zhilian then told Li Zhirui what happened today, and also told Li Zirui's guess. A tall tree attracts the wind. Li Zhirui sighed, I actually forgot such a simple truth. It seems that the position of the clan leader should be handed over to the younger generation. After saying this, Li Zhilian no longer cared about dealing with the three cultivators, and hurriedly said, "Second brother, please don't say that. The family still needs you to lead it now." Yeah, but before Li Zhilian could breathe a sigh of relief, he heard the clan leader continue, "Zirui's current cultivation is still too low. At least wait until he breaks through the foundation before you can give him the position of clan leader." Second brother, do you want Li Zhirui to be the clan leader? Li Zhilian was surprised and said, "Zhirui is indeed smart and has made great contributions to the family, but his seniority is too low. If he becomes the clan leader, if an elder makes a mistake, how can he, a junior, come forward to deal with it?" Li Zhirui disagreed, "Don't we still have us? I believe that the Li family will definitely get better development in Zirui's hands. Besides, now in the family, besides him, who else do you think can take over the important task of clan leader?" Li Zhirui is careless, Li Zhirui is cold, and the other members of the Shi generation have no chance of breaking through the foundation building stage, so the next patriarch can only be chosen from the Zhi generation. Among the younger generation of patriarchs, Li Zhirui has good qualifications, a better mind, and a lot of affection for the family. Who else can be the patriarch except him? Of course, Li Zhirui wants to resign not only because of this sudden whim caused by negligence, but more because he wants to seek a higher realm. Before, because he was always worried about the family, Li Zhirui could only suppress his yearning for the avenue in his heart, but now that he has a good successor, he can't hold it back. Okay, it's too early to talk about this now, let's solve the current problems first. Seeing that Li Zhilian was still trying to persuade, Li Zhirui spoke first and changed the subject. A trace of murderous intent appeared in Li Zhilian's eyes, and he said without hesitation, "Kill them directly and teach those three families a lesson. Take the people out before doing it, so that they don't have special marks on them. Never let anyone catch the handle." Li Zhilian understood and immediately grabbed the three people and flew out of the Banyan Island. He did not stop until he was close to the Redwood Island. He first smashed their dantian, making them unconscious, and then threw them into the sea. Seeing them being eaten by fish, Li Zhilian immediately wiped out his own breath and left quickly. At the same time, a broken life card appeared in the ancestral hall of the three major families. The life card is closely related to the monks. The broken life card means the death of the monk. The sudden death of a foundation-building monk is a very serious matter for the three major families. Did Zhang Nikai and the foundation-building monks of the other two families ambush that Li Zhilian? How could he suddenly die? The Zhang clan leader shouted angrily. He didn't believe that Zhang Nikai would suddenly die when he had a huge advantage. There must be other reasons. Clan leader, is it possible that the spoils were not evenly divided afterwards, and the monks of the two families joined forces to kill Nikai, but soon, the other two families sent people to tell the Zhang family that they also fell in the foundation-building stage, and asked if Zhang Nikai was still alive. The three families compared the news and came up with an unbelievable answer. Did the Li family do it? Patriarch Zhang shouted in disbelief. That Li Zhilian is only in the middle stage of foundation building, how could he escape from the ambush? Even if he escaped and called for help from the Banyan Island, the three of them would not be wiped out. The other two families also thought it was unlikely, but no matter how unwilling they were to accept it, this was the fact. It couldn't be that the three of them were unlucky and encountered a large-scale sea clan or a passing giant and cultivator, right? In the final analysis, it was because outsiders didn't know enough about the Li family, didn't know how strong the Li family was, and didn't know the Li family's origins and trump cards, so this cognitive bias occurred. When the anger gradually dissipated, the three families suddenly remembered a very serious matter. Now the Li family must know that they were jointly targeted by them, so would they take this opportunity to directly destroy the three families? The life of a foundation-building cultivator is enough to make each other mortal enemies. With such a deep hatred, wouldn't the Li family, who have the advantage, want to cut the grass and eradicate it? Therefore, for a long time afterwards, the top leaders of the three major families were in a state of panic, fearing that the Li family would suddenly attack them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Storm. However, after Li Zhirui followed Li Zhirui to the market, he told Li Zhirui what happened on the way, which made him furious and he wanted to destroy the three families. Uncle Ren, the most important thing now is to guard against and find the person hiding in the dark. Li Zhirui hurriedly pulled Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui, who is always aloof, also said, Zhirui, now is not the time to tear your face with the three families. Although the Li family is stronger than any other family, if they join forces, the Li family can't do anything to them, and Yuan Mingzong will not allow the Li family to destroy the three families. Zhirui, where do you think they will start? Li Zhirui frowned slightly, and a trace of worry appeared on her cold face. They lost three foundation building masters this time, so they probably won't dare to attack directly again. So they can only target the two shops. Li Zhirui had been thinking about this question all the way. He had already guessed it in his mind, and said directly, Yuncheng Lao. Yuncheng Lao is not like a grocery store. It has been open for several months and has left a good impression in the hearts of the cultivators. Moreover, it is more convenient to attack in a restaurant. They want to tamper with his spiritual food, and then frame and slander Yuncheng Lao, undermine Yuncheng Lao's business and the reputation of the Li family. Li Zhirui instantly understood what Li Zhirui wanted to say. Li Zhirui rarely came into contact with this aunt, and his impression of her was only cold. Now he still thinks she is very smart. Then how to solve this matter? Li Zhirui suddenly asked. It's very simple. Just install a few photo stones in the kitchen and lobby to prove the innocence of the family, and also catch the person who did it. This series of events made Li Zhirui alert. It is normal for the development of the family to encounter obstacles and enemies, but the family only opened two shops, and it provoked three or even more forces to target. If this continues, I don't know how many similar things the family will encounter. But this is not something that Li Zhirui or the Li family can control, because as long as the Li family continues to develop, it will inevitably damage the interests of other forces and then become enemies. Unless the Li family gives up development. But is this possible? In order to solve this situation, Li Zhirui feels that there is only one answer, that is, to make the Li family stronger, so that other forces dare not target and plot against the Li family. But this cannot be done immediately, and the Li family now needs time to develop. The night is long and dreams are many. Let's go to Yuncheng building now. Li Zhirui was holding back a ball of fire in his heart, and now he urgently needed to find an object to vent, and he set his sights on the monk who had not appeared in Yuncheng building yet. When Li Zhirui and the other two arrived at Yuncheng building, the door was already open, but because it was still early, there were no customers in the store. Why are you here? Li Zhirui, who was clearing the account, saw the three people coming towards him and asked with a puzzled look. Li Zhirui waved his hand and said, I have something to do. You are busy. Don't worry about us. I will explain it to you later. Then, under Li Zhirui's surprised eyes, Li Zhirui took out 5 photo stones and pasted them on the 4 corners and the center of the lobby wall. Not only that, they also went into the kitchen and placed more photo stones. What are you doing? Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Li Zhirui, saying, it's not the time to tell you now. Just pretend you don't know about this. I know, Li Zhirui was not a fool. He probably guessed something. He went back to the counter nervously and buried his head in the accounts. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, The three hid in the backyard. Will that person come today? Unfortunately, no one could answer Li Zhirui's question. Although Li Zhirui guessed that they would take action against Yuancheng Lao, it was impossible to know when they would take action. The three waited for a whole morning, but they didn't wait for the person who took action, but they waited for Li Zhilian. Uncle Lian, have those three been dealt with? Li Zhilian responded and asked, what are you doing? Li Zhirui expressed his guess and said uncertainly, perhaps because of the fate of those three people, he dared not take action. Then wait a little longer, I'll go to settle the accounts. Seeing that they were so well prepared and he didn't need him, Li Zhilian didn't want to waste time here, so he bypassed the three people and went into the back room. The three waited for a while, and Li Zhilian didn't want to stay any longer. As soon as she got up, she heard an angry roar from the lobby. What kind of black shop is this? There are actually stink bug corpses in the spiritual food. And the spiritual beast meat has a bad smell. Here they come. Li Zhirui seemed particularly excited and was about to rush out to catch him. Li Zhirui quickly grabbed Li Zhirui and said, Uncle Ren, wait a little longer and see if he has any accomplices. As expected, because of this man's shouting, not only did he attract the attention of the customers in the store, but also many passing monks surrounded him. I've always heard that the spiritual stones in Yuancheng Lao are not only delicious, but also have a richer spiritual energy. Now it seems that they are probably made of something unknown. At this time, a cultivator who was watching stood up at the right time, with a look of realization on his face, and said, no wonder I suddenly felt unwell a few days ago. Now I think it's probably because I ate a spiritual food at Yuancheng Lao at that time. I thought it was only me who had this problem, but I didn't expect that there were others like this. One after another, several more cultivators stood up. Pay compensation. This kind of black shop should be smashed. We can't let it continue to harm people. For a while, the crowd was excited, and some people even rushed into the lobby, ready to smash the shop. As the shopkeeper, Li Zhirui acted very panicked, but if someone looked at his expression carefully, they would find that all this was superficial and even a little deliberate. Let's see who dares to do it. With Li Zhirui's roar, the pressure of the foundation building cultivators completely erupted, and the noisy scene suddenly quieted down. Li Zhirui walked up to the person who had caused the trouble at the beginning, suppressed his anger, and asked, you said that you found the stink bug in the spiritual food, because Yuancheng Lao was not clean and used smelly spiritual beast meat. Yes. So many people are watching. I found it from the spiritual food you brought out. For some reason, he always felt that something was wrong, but in this situation, he had no way to retreat and could only hold on. Really? Then let everyone see where those smelly meat and stink bugs came from. Li Zhirui sneered, with murderous intent in his eyes that was not concealed at all, which frightened the man so much that his whole body trembled. In front of everyone, Li Zhirui took down all the 5 photo stones placed in the lobby and activated them with magic power. The photo stones recorded very clearly the scene of him putting stink bugs and smelly meat into the spiritual food, and then angrily slamming the table and shouting to deliberately frame someone. What else do you have to explain? Li Zhirui looked at the man with a smile. The man collapsed to the ground in an instant, and he knew that he was probably doomed this time. Seeing this, the other accomplices wanted to escape, but Li Zhilian just waved her hand and a vine appeared out of thin air, binding them tightly. Chapter 29 Follow-up. Those monks who really came to watch the fun were in an uproar when Li Zhirui activated the photo stone. They didn't expect that it was the thief crying catch the thief, or that the Li family had installed the photo stone in the lobby. Tell me, who sent you here? As long as you are willing to tell us, we will spare you, Li Zhirui asked with ulterior motives. As long as he revealed the mastermind behind the scenes in front of so many people, the image of that force would definitely fall to the bottom, and it would be difficult to continue to survive in the market. I took this task on the black market, and I don't know who issued the task. The monk who was originally in despair hurriedly told everything he knew. Li Zhirui thought it was a pity in his heart. He didn't expect the mastermind behind the scenes to be so cautious. I'm afraid that he can't even find the suspect now. I have said everything I should say. Can you let me go? The monk asked cautiously. Li Zhirui saw Li Zhirui nod, and then nodded and let him go. What about us? Can we leave too? The monks who were tied up asked expectantly when they saw that the culprit could leave. He gave useful information. What about you? If I remember correctly, your behavior should violate the rules of the market. We have the right to deal with you. Li Zhirui did not give up, wondering if he could get some answers from them. The person who was looking for us was wearing black clothes and covered his body tightly. We couldn't see his face at all, but suddenly someone added, I followed him and saw him enter Yingxiang from the back door. Yingxiang. Li Zhirui did not react for a while, but someone among the monks who were watching suddenly shouted, isn't this the restaurant opened by the Qin family? The Qin family must be jealous of Yun Shanglau's good business. They can't beat them openly, so they do this disgusting thing behind the scenes. Yingxiang is really insidious. I will never go there again. The monks who felt guilty for misunderstanding Yun Shanglao before now took their guilt as anger and vented it all on Yingxiang. Li Zhirui silently took note of Yingxiang and the Qin family, and then said loudly, because of the accident just now, I disturbed everyone's meal. Yun Shanglao will send a bowl of spiritual rice later to express our apology. We have told you everything we know, can you let us go? The Tide monk asked hurriedly. Get lost, Li Zhirui said with strong repressed anger. Li Zhirui sighed silently in his heart, and then watched them quickly escape from Yun Shanglao. Although these people broke the rules of the market, the Li family could not punish them personally, but had to hand them over to Yuan Mingzong for them to deal with. But the Li family did not want Yuan Mingzong to intervene, because this matter involved the Qin family, a foundation-building family with a close relationship with Yuan Mingzong. The Qin family was one of Yuan Mingzong's earliest vassal families, but what the Li family feared was that the teacher of Zheng Xianming, the only golden elixir cultivator of Yuan Mingzong, was from the Qin family. Although his teacher has passed away, it is rumored that he was very kind to Zheng Xianming when he was alive, and after his death, Zheng Xianming also took good care of the Qin family. So this matter is definitely not related to the Qin family, so what is the need to deal with these monks who do things for money? Maybe when they are in the hands of Yuan Mingzong, what they just said will suddenly reverse, and then the Li family will be unlucky. After Li Zhirui apologized to the guests of the restaurant again, he followed the two elders into the backyard. Let's stop here, Li Zhilian, who had been waiting for a long time, said. He was unwilling, but what can he do? It must be strong. As the weaker party, they can only swallow their anger to avoid disaster. Yes, the three responded in unison. The three elders all have things to do, and Li Zhirui also has to find someone to sell elixirs, so the four of them dispersed and gathered again at the hour of you to return to the family together. Li Zhirui had no problem finding someone to buy the elixirs he made, so it wasn't long before he sold all the elixirs he had at the price of 3,700 spiritual stones. On the way to the magic tool shop, Li Zhirui heard many cultivators discussing the frame-up of Yunshang Tower, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. Although he couldn't do anything to the Qin family, the current situation was a big blow to the Qin family's reputation. As a restaurant opened by the Qin family, Yingxiang's future business would definitely be worse than the current situation. Li Zhirui walked into a shop specializing in magic tools with a good mood. What magic tools do you need? A beautiful female cultivator in a water green dress asked with a smile. Li Zhirui bluntly stated his needs. Please introduce me to your store's alchemy furnace. Although the family provided him with an alchemy furnace, Li Zhirui still wanted to buy one, and he also needed an alchemy furnace of a higher grade to avoid serious leakage of spiritual energy when refining the elixir. Fellow Taoist, please follow me. After saying that, she led Li Zhirui into the compartment. After Li Zhirui sat down, the female cultivator introduced, there are a total of 13 alchemy furnaces in our store, 5 of which are of the first grade low quality. Just take out the best alchemy furnaces. Li Zhirui interrupted the female cultivator's introduction. Fellow Taoist, wait a moment. The female cultivator was not angry, and the smile on her face became more brilliant. She walked away with graceful steps. But a moment later, the female cultivator walked in with a jade plate with 3 storage bags. She placed the jade plate in front of Li Zhirui and introduced it with a smile. These are the 3 best alchemy furnaces in our store. I hope you will like them. Then she took out a red alchemy furnace and introduced it. This is the red fire alchemy furnace, a first-grade top-grade magic weapon made of red fire concentrate. It can help alchemists better control the temperature of the spiritual fire and reduce the failure of alchemy due to changes in the spiritual fire temperature. The price is 1,000 spiritual stones. Seeing that Li Zhirui did not say a word, the female cultivator knew that he did not like this alchemy furnace, and immediately took out the second alchemy furnace and said, the green jade alchemy furnace is also a first-grade top-grade magic weapon made of top-grade green jade. It can effectively prevent the leakage of medicinal effects, lock the spiritual energy, and improve the quality of the spiritual pill. The price is 1,300 spiritual stones. This green jade alchemy furnace is about 3 feet high, green in color. And there are many cloud patterns carved on the furnace body. You can vaguely see a dragon floating in it. Let's take this alchemy furnace. Li Zhirui didn't want to listen, and he was very satisfied with a green jade alchemy furnace. After that, Li Zhirui took out 1,300 spirit stones and put them into the storage bag of the alchemy furnace. After she confirmed the number, she put away the green jade alchemy furnace. After the payment and goods were settled, Li Zhirui immediately got up and left. Shopkeeper Qin, who was waiting for good news at Yingxiang, finally received the abuse and ridicule of the monks. This sudden bolt from the blue made him collapse to the ground in an instant, his face full of horror and disbelief. How is it possible? How is this possible? Shopkeeper Qin seemed to have lost his soul and kept repeating this sentence. In the end, the clerk in the store couldn't stand it anymore. After closing the door, he pushed him and said, "Uncle, you'd better go back to the family quickly and tell the clan leader about the matter and let him handle it." "Yes, you are right. I should go back to the family immediately and tell the clan leader about the matter." Shopkeeper Qin got up from the ground in a hurry and left the market from the back door. Thank you all for your support. The first round of recommendations for Chapter 30 will begin next week. I hope everyone can give us a lot of support so that this book can go through more rounds of recommendations. As everyone knows, follow-up reading accounts for a large proportion of the current recommendation mechanism of Kidian. In order to make this book go further and make the humble author feel that this book has more hope, I beg everyone to take a few minutes to read the latest chapter starting from next Monday. Please, everyone. Xiaoji would like to thank you. Chapter 31, Spirit Testing. What did you say? Clan leader Qin roared angrily. If you can't even do this little thing, what use do I have for you, clan leader? Even if the Li family knew that we did it, they wouldn't dare to deal with the family. It would have been better if he didn't mention this. When shopkeeper Qin opened his mouth, clan leader Qin was completely furious. You idiot. Does it matter whether the Li family does it now? After this incident, do you think there will be any guests at Yingxiang? Outsiders knew that the Qin family had a close relationship with Yuan Mingzong, but in this matter, the Li family was the victim. If Yuan Mingzong insisted on intervening, what would the other vassal families think? And it was obvious that the Li family also knew the relationship between the Qin family and Yuan Mingzong, and had no intention of doing it themselves, but this kind of heartbreaking method was even more terrifying. As for the giant cultivator of Yuan Mingzong, the Qin family was unwilling to waste the friendship between the two sides on this matter. Go to the market right now, take down the signboard of Yingxiang, and then close the shop. When the situation calms down, reopen it with a new name. Clan leader Qin got angry when he saw the waste in front of him. Then what? Shopkeeper Qin asked a very stupid question. Clan leader Qin used all his strength to suppress the anger in his heart, and just shouted loudly, "Then you get back here. Stay in the family honestly." If it weren't for the fact that the other party was a real blood relative to him, he would have wanted to chop him to death. But the matter of Yingxiang had not been dealt with yet, and clan leader Qin heard another piece of news, a very terrible news. The three major families of Zhang, Zhang, and he all lost a foundation building cultivator. This, clan leader Qin immediately reacted that these three foundation building cultivators might have died at the hands of the Li family. Do you know what's going on? Elder Qin shook his head and said, I don't know. This news has been spread without a beginning or an end, but the three families have not come out to explain. I'm afraid this is news that the Li family deliberately released, with the purpose of intimidating us forces that are targeting it. As he said this, the Qin clan leader couldn't help but sigh and said, forget it, the Li family is not someone we can provoke, so let's be honest, the ups and downs of the outside world did not disturb the peace and tranquility on the Banyan Island. The Li family seemed to have not been affected at all, and there was no difference from the usual days. However, today, the entire Banyan Island became lively. Whether it was the cultivators or the secular clansmen, they all seemed very excited and expectant. Because today is the family's annual spirit testing conference. The so-called spirit testing is to test whether children over the age of 5 have spiritual roots. If they have spiritual roots, they can become a cultivator seeking the Tao. If not, they can only be a simple and ordinary mortal. Zhirui, why are you here? The person who presided over the spirit test was Li Zhirui. When he saw Li Zhirui suddenly appearing at the test site, he couldn't help but show a hint of surprise on his face. When he was in Bailang County before, Li Zhirui rarely participated in such activities. After he came to Banyan Island and learned to make pills, he was even more reluctant to go out. Li Zhirui really didn't expect to see him here. "Come out for some fresh air," Li Zhirui said with a smile. He is now trying to refine a spiritual pill that is more difficult to refine. Its name is Qian Meidan. As the name suggests, this pill can strengthen the meridians and make them more resilient. It's just that because he has never succeeded, Li Zhirui is very irritable, so he plans to come out to relax, but he didn't expect to encounter such an important thing as the spirit testing conference. "Uncle Ren, there were only 3 people with spiritual roots last year. I'm afraid there will be even fewer this year." Although Li Zhirui doesn't like to join in the fun, he still pays attention to the results of each spirit testing conference. After all, whether a family can continue depends not only on whether there is a strong strength to protect the safety of the family, but also on whether the family has a future. The spirit testing conference is to see the hope of the family's future and how big an opportunity it can have. Although it is not so accurate, after all, no one can be sure what achievements these children who have tested their spiritual roots will have in the future. No way, there are too few secular people on the Banyan Island, and less than 1,000 people meet the requirements this year. Li Zhirui did not have high expectations for this year's spirit test conference. You know, last year in the entire Bailang County, there were tens of thousands of children who met the requirements, but among so many people, there were only 3 children with spiritual roots. It is not an exaggeration to say that 1 in 10,000 is chosen. So this year, Li Zhirui feels that it is already very lucky to have a child with spiritual roots. Since there are few secular people, why not encourage them to have more children? The Banyan Island can at least accommodate 1 million mortals, but it is still far from the limit. And even if the Banyan Island cannot accommodate more people, there are still several deserted islands nearby that can be developed for secular people to live. Before, the family only regarded the Banyan Island as a place to continue the bloodline, and the main focus was still on Bailang County. After all, who would have thought that the Baiyu sect would suddenly give birth to a Yuanying cultivator, and the beast-taming sect would be overturned? Take your time. Now everything in the family is moving in a good direction. At this time, all the children to be tested have arrived. Li Zhirui stopped chatting with Li Zhirui and walked quickly to the spirit testing formation, ready to activate the formation and start the test. The spirit testing formation can test 100 people at a time. It is not as troublesome as using the spirit testing stone, which can only be done one by one. But if the Li family did not have Li Zhirui, a second-level formation master, there would be no way to use the spirit testing formation, because it is a second-level formation. Enter the formation. As Li Zhirui spoke, 100 ignorant children entered the formation under the expectant eyes of their parents. Li Zhirui activated the formation, and 8 kinds of spiritual lights appeared in an instant, and then they dispersed and fell into the formation. As time passed, slowly, 3 light pillars rose above the head of a child, namely the white light pillar symbolizing the gold spirit root, the green light pillar symbolizing the wood spirit root, and the yellow light pillar symbolizing the earth spirit root. The spirit testing formation can only test whether there is a spirit root. As for the purity of the spirit root, more accurate tests are needed. But no matter what, a new member of the Li family will appear this year. A good start, Li Zhirui said happily. It seems that this spirit testing conference will have a good result. Yes, Li Zhirui is also looking forward to it. Li Zhirui closed the formation, and then another elder took the child with the spirit root to stand aside. After the spirit test was over, he took everyone to test the purity of the spirit root. The other children, who knew what this meant, couldn't help crying loudly, and then caused others to start crying, and the scene was suddenly filled with crying and shouting. Looking at the scene in front of him, Li Zhirui suddenly remembered the day when he stood in the spirit testing formation 13 years ago. At that time, he realized that he had traveled to a world of immortal cultivation, and he was looking forward to a good result. When the result appeared, Li Zhirui hadn't reacted yet, and saw all the cultivators present, with smiles on their faces, surrounding him. At that time, he couldn't help thinking, I should have a spirit root, right? And it looks like I have good qualifications. Then Li Zhirui was taken to take the test again. Although many people were disappointed after the results came out, Li Zhirui didn't care. He only knew that he had spiritual roots and was qualified to enter the mysterious world of cultivation. It is really important to read the latest chapters. Please spend a few minutes every day to read the latest chapters. Thank you. Chapter 32 Weeds. Li Zhirui, who was lost in thought, was brought back to reality by a burst of exclamations. He looked carefully and saw 3 children with light beams on their heads standing in the spirit testing formation. Is this the second time the formation has been activated? Li Zhirui, or no one else, had expected that there would be 4 children with spiritual roots among the 200 people. Although they all had 3 or 4 spiritual roots, the family could have 4 more members at a time. After more than 10 years, it would be a significant improvement in the overall strength of the family. Li Zhirui and others looked at the next wave of children tested with great anticipation, but unfortunately no light beam appeared among them, and the same was true for the subsequent waves. It might be because of the previous situation that everyone's expectations were too high, so that they were disappointed even though there were obviously very good results. Let the last few dozen children enter the formation. Li Zhirui had no hope. Li Zhirui glanced casually at the crowd, but he didn't expect that 2 children caught his attention. One was a girl with ordinary looks, a cold little face, and no nervousness between her eyebrows, and the other was a girl with a delicate and beautiful face and a bright smile. After all the children entered the formation was immediately activated, and various spiritual lights began to fly. The blue spiritual light symbolizing the water spiritual root seemed to have found its home, and it rushed towards the delicate little girl. This, Li Zhirui was slightly stunned. If he remembered correctly, this should be a phenomenon that only occurs when the spiritual root is extremely pure. But this little girl is not a single spiritual root, because next to the blue light column, there is also a very faint white light column. When Li Zhirui came to his senses and looked at the formation again, it was another little girl who came into view. There was also a light column above her head, but it was white, green, red and yellow, which meant that she had 4 spiritual roots with poor qualifications. She seemed to understand what this meant, and her face dimmed for a moment, but soon returned to her original coldness, but there was more determination between her eyebrows. Li Zhirui, who saw this scene, showed a hint of surprise in his eyes, but it also made him more interested in this little girl. Moreover, compared with the genius of the golden water dual spiritual roots that other tribesmen valued, Li Zhirui was more optimistic about this little girl with 4 spiritual roots. It's not that Li Zhirui felt that her appearance threatened his position in the family. After all, no matter how good her qualifications were, she was just a mortal now and could only start practicing in 3 years. But 3 years later, Li Zhirui would at least be at the 9th level of key training, and might even be able to attack the foundation building realm. The age gap between the 2 sides was too large, and there would be no contradiction between them. This was an unexplained and inexplicable feeling. Perhaps Li Zhirui's gaze was too obvious, attracting the attention of the little girl. When she found that it was Li Zhirui who was looking at her, she was not panicked at all. She bowed slightly calmly and then retracted her gaze. Li Zhirui originally wanted to leave after watching the first round of tests. But now he really wanted to know the name of the little girl. So, he followed everyone to the main hall, and as a reserve senior official, Li Zhirui was qualified to enter, unlike Li Zhirui and others who could only stand outside the door and watch. This year, there were a total of 6 clansmen with spiritual roots, twice as many as last year. All the senior officials were very happy and satisfied with this result. Not to mention that among these 6 people, there was also a double spiritual root genius with extremely high spiritual root purity. Let's test the purity of the spiritual roots first. Li Zhirui offered the spirit measuring ruler, and then asked the girl with 2 spiritual roots to come forward. Stretch out your hand, Li Zhirui said softly. The little girl did not hesitate, and stretched out her right hand generously. Li Zhirui pierced a drop of blood from her fingertips with lightning speed and dripped it on the spirit measuring ruler. Buzz! In an instant, the spirit measuring ruler glowed brightly, and the blue spirit light rose rapidly, occupying most of the ruler. The purity of the water spirit root is 95, and the purity of the gold spirit root is 5. Faced with such a result, even Li Zhirui, who had experienced many storms, trembled a little. Good. Elders such as Li Zhilian and Li Zhile did not have so many scruples. They were all happy and laughed loudly, appearing to be particularly excited. This level of spiritual root purity can already be called a single spiritual root. Then her cultivation speed is probably not much slower than that of a heavenly spiritual root, right? The so-called heavenly spiritual root is the name of a single spiritual root with a purity of 100. It is said that a cultivator with a heavenly spiritual root does not have any bottlenecks before the nascent soul stage. In other words, as long as a cultivator with a heavenly spiritual root does not die halfway, he will definitely become a giant and cultivator. Ahem, Li Zhirui coughed lightly, asking everyone to be quiet so as not to scare the children, and then asked, "Do you have a name?" The little girl answered crisply, "My name is Li Yingyu." "Then you change your name to Li Zhirui, okay?" Perhaps the little girl's parents had told her before, so she quickly accepted her new name. "Zhirui, stand aside first." Li Zhirui called several other children and asked them to come forward one by one to test the purity of their spiritual roots. The purity of their spiritual roots was very ordinary, and the purity of their main spiritual roots was around 40 to 50. There was no situation like Li Zhirui that surprised everyone, but this was the norm. "Child, come forward." In the end, only the girl that Li Zhirui was interested in was left. The girl came forward upon hearing the voice, and watched the blood essence drip into the spirit measuring ruler. A hint of expectation appeared in her usually cold eyes. But unfortunately, the purity of her spirit roots was the same as her qualifications, and there was nothing to praise. The purity of the gold spirit root is 42, the purity of the wood spirit root is 12, the purity of the fire spirit root is 36, and the purity of the earth spirit root is 10. Li Zhirui still asked in a gentle voice, "Child, what was your name before?" "Li Zhuan." "Zhuan?" Li Zhirui raised his eyebrows slightly. The parents of this child actually regarded her as a weed? But perhaps it was because of this living environment that she cultivated her current strong character, which can be regarded as a loss and a gain. "Then you will be called Li Zhirui in the future, okay?" Li Zhirui suddenly said, "The wind blows the grass but it does not break, and weakness gives birth to strength." After that, Li Zhirui stared at Li Zhirui and asked, "Did you remember it?" "I remember it." Li Zhirui looked up at Li Zhirui without fear, with a hint of doubt in her eyes, and said, "But I don't understand what this sentence means." "Just remember it. As for the meaning, you will understand it in the future." Li Zhirui did not explain. A touch of color appeared in the little girl's eyes, and she said, "I remember it." Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui in surprise. He could see that Li Zhirui admired Li Zhirui, but he couldn't figure out why. But the others looked strange. They thought that Li Zhirui suddenly talked to Li Zhirui because Li Zhirui's sudden appearance made him feel threatened. But they didn't think about it. Even if Li Zhirui felt threatened, why did he look for this little girl with very poor qualifications? Li Zhirui took in everyone's eyes and reactions, but he didn't care, and there was no need to care. "Shiren, take Zhirui and the others to Linghuan." Li Zhirui spoke up to break the strange atmosphere in the main hall. Linghuan is a place that the Li family uses to train children who have just been tested for spiritual roots and cannot practice yet. Its name is taken from the word spiritual heart and wisdom, which is also the family's expectation for these children. Okay, Li Zhirui stood up and left with his 6 children. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 33 Sword Cultivation. Chapter 33 Sword Cultivation, please read on. "Zhirui, why do you like that girl?" Li Zhirui asked with some curiosity. Li Zhirui grinned and said, "Feeling, patriarch, I'm going back to make the elixir first." Li Zhirui ignored the surprised eyes of everyone and left the main hall directly. Li Zhirui frowned slightly. He didn't believe that Li Zhirui would deliberately leave a meaningful sentence for people because of the illusory feeling, but he also didn't believe how much Li Zhirui would achieve in the future. Because the Li family has been passed down for more than 300 years, there has never been a foundation-building cultivator with 4 spiritual roots. Li Zhirui ignored the thoughts and speculations of others. After he returned to the courtyard, he began to refine the cayenne maple. Maybe because he was in a good mood, he succeeded after trying several times. Li Zhirui opened the Kingayu damp furnace, and saw a round cayenne maple suspended in the spiritual water. In order to remember this feeling, Li Zhirui refined several more furnaces. There were successes and failures, but the later he went, the higher the chance of Li Zhirui's success. Li Zhirui wanted to continue refining, but unfortunately, the materials in his hand had been used up, so he had no choice but to give up. "Why are you hungry again?" Li Zhirui heard Daking's cry before he cleaned up the alchemy room, and said helplessly. Li Zhirui couldn't figure it out. Daking was still far away from a breakthrough, but in recent days, he was hungry very quickly, and his appetite was twice as large as before. He also suspected that Daking was sick, but Li Zhirui checked carefully several times and found no problems, and Daking didn't feel uncomfortable. "It's just me. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to feed a big eater like you." Li Zhirui took out a dozen spiritual fruits, piled them in front of Daking, and said unhappily. Shiji, Daking cried twice in dissatisfaction, ate the spiritual fruits in a whirlwind, and then looked at Li Zhirui eagerly, looking like he was not full. You want more? Li Zhirui was stunned and said, are you really sick? Daking shook his head and shouted repeatedly, urging Li Zhirui to take more spiritual fruits. Li Zhirui had no choice but to do as he was told, and then watch Daking eat more than 50 spiritual fruits. You should rest well at home. Li Zhirui was really worried now, and hurried to the Sutra library to see if he could find out the reason why Daking suddenly liked to eat. Now, except for Li Zhirui, no one in the Li family cultivated turtle spirit beasts. Although they have a long lifespan, they grow too slowly, so he could only run to the Sutra library to find the reason. 2 or 3 things about turtle spirit beasts, how to cultivate turtle spirit beasts. As long as it was a classic book with the word turtle, Li Zhirui borrowed all of them. Anyway, he now had a lot of contribution points. After reading a lot of classics, Li Zhirui finally found the reason, but he was confused about the result. Daking was preparing to shed his shell. Turtle spirit beasts actually shed their shells? As the turtles continue to grow, their shells remain unchanged and cannot accommodate their growing size. When the turtles shed their shells, they fall into deep sleep, so they need to accumulate a lot of spiritual energy to avoid being in danger due to insufficient spiritual energy. Each time the turtles shed their shells, it takes as short as a month, or as long as half a year to a year. After knowing that this is a normal phenomenon, Li Zhirui was relieved, although he still couldn't understand why turtles shed their shells. As for the dangerous situations that the turtles would encounter when they shed their shells, Li Zhirui didn't take it to heart, because he had enough spiritual fruits and elixirs to meet Daking's needs. After returning to the courtyard, Li Zhirui piled a lot of spiritual fruits in front of Daking and said, if you are hungry, eat it yourself. Perhaps because he had accumulated enough spiritual energy, Daking fell into deep sleep within a few days and began to shed his shell for the first time in his turtle life. Li Zhirui would check on Daking's condition every day to make sure that he would not have any accidents, so that he could feel at ease. In Linghuan, Li Zhixun carried a blunt sword weighing 10 kilograms on her back, and gritted her teeth to exercise in the eyes of everyone's surprise and confusion. This iron sword was found by Li Zhixun in the armory. She liked it at first sight. Because it was a blunt sword and she was young, the management staff did not care and let her leave the armory with the iron sword. Before the age of 8, every member of the Li family with spiritual roots needs to exercise to polish the body and strengthen the meridians. They are doing this now. This kind of exercise is very hard. After each exercise, they are very tired. They need to nourish the body through herbal baths and sleep so that they can recover their energy the next day. When Li Zhirui was in Linghuan, facing this kind of devilish training, he almost couldn't hold on with his adult mentality, which shows how terrible this training is. But Li Zhixun, a little girl who is nearly 5 years old, actually carried a 10-kilogram iron sword on her back to do this terrible exercise. The elder who managed the Linghu Academy and was responsible for teaching these children looked at Li Zhixun with a look of relief, but when he thought of her qualifications, he immediately revealed a trace of regret. Zhixun, you are still young now. Excessive exercise will not be good for you. Instead, it will damage your meridians. So when you exercise, don't carry the iron sword on your back. Seeing that Li Zhixun was silent, the gentle elder said helplessly, this iron sword is given to you, but you can only carry it at other times, otherwise I will take it back. Okay. Li Zhixun untied it obediently, put the iron sword aside, and ran back to continue exercising. Half an hour later, Li Zhixun's group of children was the first to disband. While the other 5 were still sighing, Li Zhixun had already carried the iron sword again and walked towards the cafeteria. Although they are not monks now, they are no longer eating ordinary things, but the most peaceful first-level lower-grade spiritual rice and spiritual food. Although they could not absorb the spiritual energy, it would accumulate in their flesh and blood, and when they become formal cultivators, it would help them break through the first level of key training as soon as possible. Zhixun, why are you working so hard? Li Zhirui asked curiously. Their group of people had lived in Linghuan for several days, but Li Zhixun had always been alone, and this was the first time someone talked to her. Because I want to live a better life. After Li Zhixun finished speaking, she bypassed Li Zhirui and returned to her room, quietly waiting for the medicine for bathing. After taking a bath, Li Zhixun returned to the bed and whispered, the wind blows the grass but it does not break, and the weakest part gives birth to the strong. Then she began to think about what this sentence meant. It was a pity that although Ling Huiyuan also taught them to read and write, the time was too short, and her knowledge was not enough to understand this sentence. Because she was too tired, Li Zhirui fell asleep quickly. The next morning, when it was light, Li Zhirui got up from the bed, holding her iron sword, and went to the martial arts training ground to do some simple exercises. She still remembered what the elder said yesterday, so she didn't carry the iron sword. After more than half an hour, Li Zhirui left the martial arts training ground, washed up, went to the cafeteria, and finally stepped into the school on time. Today we will talk about the most powerful sword cultivator among the cultivators. After the elder came in, he said the main content of his speech. The so-called sword energy crisscrosses 30,000 miles, and the light of a sword chills the 19 continents. It refers to the powerful sword cultivator. After the elder's description, everyone present yearned for the power of the sword cultivator, and Li Zhirui was even more fascinated and listened attentively, not wanting to miss any word. Chapter 34 News. Old 5, are you sure this news is true? Li Zhirui looked at Li Shi's who had just returned with a serious face. Li Shi's nodded affirmatively. If it was not true, he would not rush back. It's true. Yuan Ming sect will hold an auction soon, and 3 foundation building pills will be auctioned at the auction. Li Zhirui did not question it anymore, but there was a problem now. The family could not afford too many spirit stones. The market price of a foundation building pill was marked as 30,000, but 30,000 spirit stones could never buy a foundation building pill, not to mention that this was at an auction. Its price would definitely rise all the way. In previous years, under the rule of the beast-taming sect, a foundation building pill would cost at least 50,000 spirit stones to buy, but that was because the vassal forces could not afford more spirit stones. But in Yunping's Hao, because there were many monks coming and going and the economy was prosperous, many families could earn spirit stones. With money in hand, the price of the foundation building pill would definitely be higher. What difficulties does the family have? Li Shi saw Li Zhirui frowning and couldn't help asking. Normally, Li Shi's would not stay on the island, because it was inconvenient to receive intelligence and news, so he did not know much about the family's situation. The 2 stores in the family market are doing very well, but the time is too short, and we haven't earned too many spirit stones. Li Zhirui sighed helplessly and said, it would be better if the auction was held a year later. By then, he would no longer have to worry about the lack of spirit stones. Shies, go and ask around to see if Yuan Mingzong would auction the foundation building pills in previous years. If Yuan Mingzong would release the foundation building pills regularly, it would not matter if he missed this time. Anyway, there was no suitable candidate in the family now. It's not that the Li family has no members who have reached the 9th level of key training. On the contrary, there are several, but these members have completely relied on time and hard work to get to the top, so they are all a little old. The best age for a cultivator to break through the foundation is before the age of 50, because after the age of 50, the blood and ki will begin to decline. If you are over 60, it is almost impossible to build a foundation. Okay, I'll send the news back to the family as soon as possible. Li Shi saw that there was nothing else for him to do, so he got up and left immediately. Li Zhirui pondered for a moment, then sent a message to Li Shilian, Li Shiren and Li Zhirui through the family jade tablet, asking them to come to the main hall as soon as possible if they were free. Li Zhirui, who was checking on decking as usual, walked towards the main hall as soon as he received the message. Patriarch, what's the matter? Li Zhirui saw that there were only 2 of them in the main hall, and thought that he was called here specifically to tell him something important. Let's talk about it later. Shi Lian and Shi Ren haven't arrived yet. Seeing that Li Zhirui was still standing aside somewhat restrained, Li Zhirui couldn't help but smile and said, relax, it's not a big deal. In order to avoid making the atmosphere too awkward, Li Zhirui asked, have you been paying attention to the girl Li Zhirui these days? No, Daking shed its shell not long ago. And I have focused all my energy on it recently. Shedding. Li Zhirui knew that turtles would shed their shells, and smiled. It seems that you have taken good care of it, otherwise Daking would not have shed its shell so soon. It has only been more than 10 years since Daking hatched. To the Kingston Turtle clan, he is still a child. Li Zhirui smiled awkwardly, but since it was about space, he didn't want to talk more about it, so he asked, Patriarch, you just mentioned Li Zhirui. What happened to her? This child is indeed good, with a strong character. If she has the opportunity, she may be able to build a foundation in the future. It's a pity that her aptitude is too poor. She has 4 spiritual roots, and the purity of her spiritual roots is not high. At the end, Li Shiking's regret was beyond words. Although Li Zhirui felt that Li Zhixuan's achievements were more than that, it would seem a bit arrogant to say this now. After all, after building a foundation, it is the golden elixir, and the Li family has not yet produced a golden elixir cultivator, so he had to acquiesce in Li Shiking's evaluation. Li Zhixuan heard Shi Ling talk about sword cultivation a few days ago, and she was very yearning in her heart. Now she is practicing mortal swordsmanship. And I heard from Shi Ling that Li Zhixuan has a good talent in this area. Maybe the family can really have another sword cultivator in the future. Li Zhixuan is now very famous in Linghu Academy. There is no one among the dozen or so children of the same age who doesn't know her. But at the same time, she is also the most unpopular existence. Because Li Zhixuan worked too hard, the others look very lazy, and she was often praised by Li Shiling, unlike other children who were always scolded by Li Shiling. Sword cultivator, Li Zhirui thought about his impression of Li Zhixuan and chuckled. This should be very suitable for her. Li Shiking looked at Li Zhirui steadily. I find that you really like this girl. People who work hard are always more lovable. At this time, Li Shilian and Li Shiren came to the main hall and interrupted the chat. I called you here this time because I have something to tell you, Li Shiking said seriously. Soon, Yuan Mingzong will hold an auction, and there will be a foundation building pill auction. Does the family want to buy a foundation building pill? As soon as he said this, Li Shilian denied himself and said, the family can't afford so many spirit stones. Yes, so I called you here this time just to let you go to the auction to see the price, so that the family can have an idea. Although Li Shilian has been in Yunping's house for many years, he has been guarding the big Banyan Island most of the time, so he is not very clear about many news from the outside world. In addition, there is one more thing. With Zhiao's qualifications, at least she should contract a 3rd-level spirit beast, so as not to delay her qualifications. So this time, you still have to bring a lot of spirit stones to participate in the auction, so as not to have a 3rd-level spirit beast egg or cub, but can't afford the spirit stones to buy it back. Okay, I know. As the most senior, Li Shilian is naturally the leader of this operation. Li Shiren followed him to prevent someone from intercepting him halfway. As for Li Zhirui, he didn't understand why he was called in at first. But after thinking about the situation of those clansmen who were at the 9th level of key training, Li Zhirui understood. Li Shiking was telling him that if nothing unexpected happened, the next foundation building pill in the family would belong to him, Li Zhirui. The clansmen of the Shi generation were already old, and their hope of building a foundation was slim, so there was no need to consider it at all. The clansmen of the Zhi generation were still young, but now only Li Zhirui and his eldest brother Li Zhizhen were in the late stage of key training, and at the current training speed, Li Zhirui would definitely break through the 9th level faster. So, the next foundation building pill must belong to Li Zhirui. And at the speed at which the Li family earns spirit stones now, it only takes 1 or 2 years to save enough spirit stones to buy the foundation building pill. So even if this foundation building pill was given to Li Zhirui, it didn't mean that Li Zhizhen would not be able to get the foundation building pill. In fact, there were several clansmen who were delayed because the family did not accumulate enough spirit stones and could not buy the foundation building pill. But that was the previous Li family. Now the Li family has Yuncheng Lao and a grocery store, and can earn thousands of lingxi every month. There will no longer be a situation where the clan members are delayed due to lack of lingxi. Thanks to Jizu Lao and Shu Iao 201910121643498890 for the rewards. Thank you all for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Auction. A few days later, the news of Yuan Mingzong's auction was officially announced. It will be held in Yunqing Market in 10 days, and the 3 foundation building pills will be promoted. However, Li Zhirui noticed that in the news released by Yuan Mingzong, the foundation building pill was not the finale of the spiritual objects. There were several auction items behind it. Is Yuan Mingzong going to auction the 3rd level spiritual objects? Li Zhirui, who originally didn't care much about this auction, suddenly became a little interested. But that's all. because Li Zhirui now has only 3 or 4,000 spirit stones in his hand, which is a considerable fortune among key training monks, but it is nothing at all in the auction. So Li Zhirui quickly put it aside and continued to live a life of alchemy and cultivation. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye it was the day of the auction. In the morning, Li Zhirui followed the 2 elders and took the spirit ship to Yunqing Market. After paying the entrance fee of 30 spirit stones, the 3 were taken to the private room on the 2nd floor. The area of the private room was not large, but it was much better than the crowded lobby on the 1st floor. The reason why they could enjoy such treatment was entirely because of the face of the 2 foundation building cultivators, Li Zhilian and Li Zhirui. The auction has not started yet, and Yuan Mingzong has earned several thousand spirit stones. Li Zhirui smacked his lips. The admission fee is 10 spirit stones. The 1st floor can at least seat several hundred cultivators. There are also dozens of rooms on the 2nd floor. If you are not a foundation building cultivator, but want to go to the 2nd floor, you can spend 100 spirit stones to buy the qualification. There is also a 3rd floor that is free for giant cultivators. It is said that low-level cultivators have to spend 1,000 spirit stones to go up. Uncle Ren, you should practice hard. After you break through the giant, the family can also hold an auction and earn the admission fee. Li Zhirui smiled. It is not that you must be a giant force to hold an auction, but because the foundation building forces cannot produce any good things and are not attractive enough, there will not be many cultivators willing to participate. Without cultivators, the auction naturally cannot be held. Instead of waiting for me to break through, you might as well expect the clan leader to form a pill as soon as possible. As he said this, Li Zhirui suddenly sighed and said, "It's just that there are too many trivial matters, and the clan leader has no time to practice." A trace of complexity flashed across Li Zhilian's eyes, and then he pretended to glance at Li Zhirui casually. Seeing that he was lost in thought, he suddenly wanted to hear his opinion on this matter. "Uncle Ren, how about you persuade the clan leader to resign and practice with peace of mind, and then you will be the clan leader?" Li Zhirui was shocked by these words and hurriedly said, "It's not that I don't want to share the burden for the clan leader, it's really because I'm not suitable to be the clan leader. Although Uncle Ren, you are careless and not smart enough. Don't we have so many elders? You can leave the specific affairs to them. If there are things that you can't make up your mind about, you can discuss and decide with the elders." Li Zhirui felt from the bottom of his heart that the distribution of power and responsibilities in the family was unreasonable. Although the family has established several elders, because of Li Zhiking's personal prestige and strong strength, no matter what the matter is, the person who makes the final decision is always Li Zhiking. The result of this is that Li Zhiking is so busy every day that he has no time to practice. However, Li Zhirui couldn't say this because it would make people feel that he was dissatisfied with Li Zhiking. Li Zhirui also borrowed Li Zhirin's words and then expressed his thoughts in a roundabout way, but he didn't say it to Li Zhirin, but to test Li Zhilian. "This matter ends here, don't talk about it again in the future." Li Zhilian glared at Li Zhirui. This brat actually wanted to use him as a gun, but he had to admit that Li Zhirui was right. "Yes," Li Zhirui smiled. He knew that Li Zhilian could understand the deep meaning of the words, and judging from his reaction, he would find an opportunity to discuss it with Li Zhiking. If Li Zhirui didn't understand these 2 elders and knew that they would not be angry about this, he would never say that anyway. Knock knock. Just at this time, there was a knock on the door. "2 seniors, these are some of the items for today's auction." A beautiful, gentle and dignified female cultivator pushed the door open and entered. Even her voice made people feel very comfortable. She placed the jade slip on the coffee table and poured a cup of fragrant spiritual tea for the 3 people. The female cultivator bowed slightly and said, "If you have any instructions, you can ring the bell to call me over." After that, she turned and left. The first auction item is a 2nd-level magic weapon. Li Zhilian raised his eyebrows slightly and said with interest, "The spirit-gathering jade pendant can gather the spiritual energy nearby, which is equivalent to a portable spirit-gathering array." He looked at the next few auction items and said, "It seems that Yuan Mingzong has put a lot of thought into this auction. Uncle Zhilian, do you think there will really be a giant cultivator participating?" Although the jade slip did not directly indicate it, it also said that there were several 3rd-level spiritual objects. If there were no giant cultivators, how could Yuan Mingzong take out spiritual objects that were expensive but unusable to low-level cultivators? Whether there are giant cultivators or not has nothing to do with us. Dong dong dong. On the auction table on the 1st floor, a hot and beautiful female cultivator appeared at some point. She was wearing a purple dress that outlined her figure to the fullest. When she raised her hands and feet, she was full of charm. Some cultivators who were not firm enough in their hearts were already addicted to her skirt. "I, Ziyan, greet all of you Taoist friends." It was like a lewd sound, tickling everyone's chest. But Li Zhirui on the second floor frowned unconsciously and asked in a low voice, "Has this person learned the art of charm?" The art of charm is not to seduce the opposite sex, but to confuse the enemy, lower their guard, and even charm them into a puppet for their own use. But now it is rare to see cultivators practicing orthodox charm techniques. Most of them are evil cultivators who practice the method of collecting and replenishing, using charm techniques to seduce the opposite sex so that they can capture the object of collection and replenishment. As a result, the reputation of charm techniques has become very unbearable. Well, no wonder Yuan Mingzong asked her to host the auction, use the charm to stir up the emotions of the monks, so that more people bid, so as to achieve the purpose of raising the price of the auction items. Thanks to the love of all Taoist friends, I am honored to be the auctioneer of this auction. The next auction will be hosted by me. I hope that all Taoist friends can get their favorite spiritual objects. After that, she began to tear open the red silk on the table, revealing the true appearance of the spirit-gathering jade pendant. The jade pendant is in the shape of yin and yang fish, and it looks very beautiful. But the monks on the first floor don't know the function of this jade pendant because they don't have a list, so they need Ziyan to introduce it. This is a second-level spirit-gathering jade pendant. Its function is to gather spiritual energy and speed up the practice, but its function is not only that. When fighting with others, if there is a spirit-gathering jade pendant, the speed of recovering mana will also be faster, which will increase your own winning rate. After Ziyan's introduction, many monks have already had the idea of taking this thing. I'm sure all of you Taoist friends know the importance of this treasure, so I won't say any more. The starting price for the second-rank low-grade magical instrument, the Pisces Spirit-Gathering Pendant, is 3,000 spirit stones, and each bid increase must not be less than 100 spirit stones. The sound of the wooden hammer meant that everyone could bid and compete. Chapter 36 Golden Elixir. As soon as the voice fell, a cultivator said, "This treasure suits my taste very well. 3,500 spirit stones, who wouldn't be tempted by such a treasure? You want to get it for only 3,500 spirit stones? It's just a foolish dream. I'll offer 4,000 spirit stones." The price kept rising until it reached 5,000 spirit stones, and the speed of people bidding slowed down. But even so, Li Zhirui was still amazed. 5,000 spirit stones can buy a second-level upper-grade magic weapon. Is this magic weapon really worth it? This treasure can speed up the cultivation speed. This alone is worth the current price, although the lifespan of a cultivator after breaking through the foundation building stage is 460 years, the difficulty of breaking through is more than 10 times higher than that of the key training stage. If there is a spirit-gathering jade pendant in hand, even if it only speeds up the cultivation speed by half, it will save decades of time for the foundation building cultivators, and this may allow them to peek into the secrets of the golden elixir before they die. Of course, this possibility is very small, but people always have to have dreams. What if it comes true? In the end, this Pisces jade pendant was bought by a foundation building cultivator at a high price of 6,800 spirit stones. The second auction item is 10 first-grade top-grade tranquilizing incense sticks. The starting price is 1,000 spirit stones, and each bid must not be less than 100 spirit stones. After the tranquilizing incense is lit, it can help cultivators calm down and concentrate quickly, enter the realm of cultivation, and also has the effect of guarding against inner demons. However, this item is not common. First, it is rare for incense makers, and second, the role of this item in guarding against inner demons is very important for cultivators. Therefore, it has been ordered by major forces early on to cultivate their own cultivators, and it is rarely revealed. 1,500 spirit stones. Li Zhirui tried to bid once, but was quickly suppressed. When the tranquilizing incense exceeded 2,000 spirit stones, Li Zhirui did not follow up. Li Zhilian said, "If you want this item, but you don't have enough spiritual stones, you can borrow some from the family." "No, the price is too high, and the tranquilizing incense is not very useful to me." Li Zhirui shook his head and refused. He is now practicing steadily and has no troubles with his inner demons, so there is no need to spend so many spiritual stones to buy tranquilizing incense. Li Zhilian nodded without comment and said nothing more. There were dozens of spiritual objects to be auctioned next. including spiritual pills, magic tools, talismans and other spiritual objects commonly used by cultivators, as well as some precious materials. During this period, Li Zhirui opened the auction several times, and finally won a piece of first-grade high-quality water-sinking wood with 300 spiritual stones, and won a set of alchemy techniques with 3,000 spiritual stones. Water-sinking wood can be used to make incense, and its effect is similar to tranquilizing incense, but it is weakened many times. Combination, extraction, fusion, nourishment, division, and condensation. 6 alchemy techniques. Li Zhirui grinned brilliantly. Although this jade slip was not cheap, it was definitely worth it for Li Zhirui. In fact, these 3,000 spirit stones were mainly used to buy aluminum extraction technique and aluminum nourishing technique, because the other 4 alchemy techniques were the basics of the basics, and any alchemist would know them. The functions of aluminum extraction technique and aluminum nourishing technique were just like their names. The former could further extract the essence and reduce the poison of the elixir, the latter could nourish the elixir and enhance the efficacy. Are you so happy? Li Zhirui couldn't quite understand why the alchemy technique bought with 3,000 spirit stones could make the usually introverted Li Zhirui show his emotions so directly. Let's put it this way, Li Zhirui organized his words and smiled. In the past, the jade spirit pills I refined could only be sold for 3 spirit stones each, but if I use this method to refine them, I can sell them for 4 spirit stones. These 3,000 spirit stones seemed a lot, but they could be earned back as long as a few hundred furnaces of spirit pills were refined. That is to say, there were few alchemists at this auction, and they did not understand the importance of the alchemy technique, or the alchemy secret was not so important in their eyes, otherwise Li Zhirui would not have won it. I came to the right auction. Li Zhirui was very satisfied with his gains. Grandpa Shilian, if the family wants these 2 alchemy secrets, just give me 1,500 spirit stones. Li Zhirui has deep feelings for the family, but he will not let his own interests be damaged. Moreover, after he bought the alchemy technique, he did not have many spirit stones on him, so it was just right to recover his blood. Well, I will talk to my second brother about this matter. Li Zhirui nodded in agreement. Soon, the first half of the auction ended. During the break, a special person would deliver the spiritual objects that were bought to everyone to complete the transaction. The female cultivator who had entered the room to make tea earlier came in with a jade tray and said, "2 seniors, these are the spiritual objects you bought earlier, a total of 3,300 spiritual stones, please count the spiritual stones." Li Zhirui didn't care about being ignored for the second time. After all, it was normal to be ignored by 2 foundation-building cultivators. The female cultivator's expression changed slightly. She could see that the key training cultivator in front of her was a well-loved one, and his qualifications should be quite good, but she didn't care. After all, as the manager of the auction house, she didn't know how many young people like this she had seen. But she never expected that the one who bought the 2 spiritual objects was actually this young cultivator. Fortunately, she had also seen a lot of storms and waves, and soon calmed down. She smiled softly and said, "Congratulations to you for getting what you wished for." Li Zhirui smiled politely, then put the water-sinking wood and jade slips into his storage bag, and turned back to his seat. The female cultivator didn't think there was anything wrong with it, and left the room quietly. Soon, the second half of the auction began. Xian, the female cultivator who practiced the art of seduction, twisted her slender waist and walked to the auction stage in a charming manner, introducing the spiritual objects at the beginning. The second-grade top-grade spiritual object Qinglu Pearl. This treasure can absorb the essence of the sun and moon of heaven and earth by itself, and can produce a small bowl of second-grade Qinglu spiritual water every day. Ziyan smiled charmingly and said, "Taking Qinglu spiritual water can remove impurities from the body, and long-term use can also cure old diseases and hidden dangers. I believe all Taoist friends know how precious this treasure is." The impurities she mentioned refer to erysipelas, various toxins naturally generated in the body, and various residues accumulated in the body before the Jinden stage because they could not fast. The starting price is 5,000 spiritual stones, and each bid must not be less than 200 spiritual stones. For Li Zhirui, this is a very high price, but there are still a large number of cultivators who bid, and soon, the price exceeded 7,000 spiritual stones. This treasure was nurtured by heaven and earth, and it is extremely rare. Yuan Mingzong was willing to auction this treasure, Li Zhirui said in surprise. There are so many foundation-building monks and key training disciples in Yuan Mingzong. Their demand for King Lu's spirit water is not small, right? Be careful with your words, Li Zhirui glared at Li Zhirui. 10,000 spirit stones. Before these 4 words fell, the noisy and hot auction hall suddenly quieted down. Because this sentence came from the 3rd floor, which had never spoken since the auction began. The faint pressure in the words reminded everyone that the person who spoke was a giant and monk. 3 breaths have passed, and no one has bid against me. According to the rules, this gem should be mine, right? Ziyan's body trembled, and her mind instantly returned. She hurriedly said, "Congratulations to this senior for bidding on the King Lu gem with 10,000 spirit stones. These 10,000 spirit stones may seem like a lot, but if it weren't for the giant and monk himself, the price would definitely be more than that. But who would dare to bid with the giant and monk? There are still a few giantins on the 3rd floor, but it is obvious that they don't want to offend this monk of the same level because of a 2nd level spiritual object. Thank you all for your support." Chapter 37 Scroll. If the first half of the auction was about 1st level spiritual objects, which were specially used to satisfy the cultivators of key training, then the auction in the 2nd half had nothing to do with cultivators of key training. Yuan Mingzong took out 2nd level spiritual objects, including many precious 2nd level spiritual objects. So far, among the 20 or 30 spiritual objects auctioned, the King Lu pearl was the most precious. It was also because of this treasure that everyone knew that there were really giant and cultivators in the auction. The next auction item is a monster egg. Ziyan's words immediately attracted the attention of Li Zhirui and the other 2. Because the auction was about to end, and this monster egg was taken out so late, it was definitely not an ordinary monster egg. The 3rd level monster beast Thunder Eagle. After it grows up, it will be huge, intelligent, gentle, and extremely fast. There will be thunder roaring when its wings vibrate. It is good at thunder magic, and is an extremely rare thunder attribute monster beast, and an excellent mountain guardian beast. The starting price is 5,000 spirit stones, and each bid must not be less than 200 spirit stones. In Ziyan's mouth, there is nothing wrong with the Thunder Eagle, but it can't be said that she is deceiving everyone, because what she said is true. It's just that she intentionally or unintentionally overlooked a crucial point. The cultivation of spirit beasts not only consumes a lot of resources, but also its growth rate is very slow. It will take at least 100 or 200 years for the Thunder Eagle to grow into a 3rd level spirit beast, and this is the result of investing a lot of resources. If it is allowed to grow on its own, there will be no hope for 300 or 400 years. What a pity. Li Zhirui's eyes were full of regret. Although there were no clansmen with thunder spirit roots in the family, it was not impossible to sign a contract with a Thunder Eagle. Moreover, as a 3rd level demon beast, the Thunder Eagle itself is very precious. If the Li family can get the Thunder Eagle, then they can mate with a jade-billed eagle cultivated by the family to give birth to a jade-billed eagle with the blood of the Thunder Eagle. If they are lucky, they may get a Thunder Eagle with impure blood. But no matter which one it is an enhancement to the family's foundation. When high-level spirit beasts mate with low-level spirit beasts, the offspring born under normal circumstances are mostly low-level spirit beasts, but they must have a certain amount of high-level spirit beast blood in their bodies. Moreover, this kind of hybrid spirit beast is easier to break the shackles of blood and break through to a higher realm than ordinary spirit beasts. It's a pity that the Li family doesn't have many spirit stones in their hands now. If they take down the Thunder Eagle egg now, and a 3rd level water attributed spirit beast appears later, they can only sit on the wax. But it seems that the forces in Yunping's house don't seem to pay much attention to demon beast eggs. Li Zhirui saw that the auction was not as lively as before, and said thoughtfully, "No matter how much Ziyan praised this 3rd level beast egg, not many monks came to bid for it, so the price of the beast egg is only more than 7,300 spirit stones. But it is normal to think about it. After all, Yunping's house is not the territory of the beast control sect. Although the monks here also have contracts with monsters, most of them are master-servant contracts. They drive monsters as tools. How can they afford to buy such expensive monster eggs? Unlike the Li family, they signed an equal contract with monsters and are close partners. Moreover, although the combat power of high-level spirit beasts is strong, it takes decades for them to cultivate a combat power from beast eggs. Naturally, not many people are willing to do so. Looking at the current situation, the price of this beast egg will not be too high, so why don't we take it down?" Li Zhirui was a little tempted. The beast egg of a 3rd level spirit beast is not so easy to come across. In fact, Li Zhirui was a little tempted without Li Zhirui's persuasion. Back when they were under the rule of the beast-taming sect, if they wanted to buy a third-level spirit beast pig, they didn't know how much they had to pay. For example, Li Zhirui's decking, in addition to paying a large amount of spirit stones, the Li family also agreed to many conditions of the beast-taming sect. However, with the demise of the beast-taming sect, the conditions that had been promised naturally disappeared with the wind. Because of this experience, coupled with their lack of understanding of the outside world, Li Zhirui and the other two misjudged the price of this third-level beast egg, thinking that it was at least 10,000 spirit stones, and they didn't dare to bid. But now, they know that third-level beast eggs are not popular, and the price will not be that high, so they are naturally tempted. But just when Li Zhirui was about to speak, a voice suddenly rang out from the third floor. I'm in need of a mount, so I'll take this Thunder Eagle, 7,500 spirit stones, the beast egg, which was not very popular to begin with. No one competed with it after this giant and cultivator spoke. Alice, faced with this situation, Li Zhirui could only sigh softly, feeling that his family had no chance to get this Thunder Eagle. Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui also sighed, but they didn't dare to talk about it when it came to giant and cultivators. I don't know how to introduce this auction item, because I, Yuan Mingzong, don't know what it is. I only know that this treasure is not afraid of water and fire. Even if a foundation building cultivator attacks with all his strength, he can't destroy it. As Ziyan spoke, a scroll was unfolded on the stage. It was 1 foot wide and 3 feet long. There was a lot of blank space on the scroll, and a lifelike divine turtle was painted in the center. The starting price of this item is 4,000 spirit stones, and each bid must not be less than 100 spirit stones. As an auctioneer, Ziyan didn't think that this scroll could be sold. Although it sounds powerful, it's actually not very useful. Maybe it can be wrapped around the chest to protect the vitals? Ziyan thought silently. The reaction to this item on the scene was very cold. Only a few cultivators who thought they were the sons of destiny and felt that they could uncover the secret of this treasure were bidding, but the highest price was only 4,500 spirit stones. Grandpa Zhilian, I want to buy this scroll, Li Zhirui said eagerly. Li Zhilian looked puzzled, but did not ask Li Zhirui why he wanted to buy the scroll. He just calculated in his mind and said, I took out 20,000 spiritual stones from the family. I must leave at least 12,000 spiritual stones. The rest can be lent to you, thank you. Grandpa Zhilian, Li Zhirui was overjoyed when he heard this, and immediately shouted, 6,000 spiritual stones. As soon as Li Zhirui opened his mouth, he added 1,500 spiritual stones, which scared away many cultivators. Only one person was still insisting, I'll add another 100 spiritual stones, I'll add 100 too. Li Zhirui pressed on step by step, showing his firm belief in getting the scroll. Seeing this, the man had to give up and muttered in a low voice, I don't know which family this young man is, squandering spiritual stones so lavishly. Li Zhirui did not hide his voice. That high spirit was not something that an older cultivator could have. Congratulations to this fellow Taoist for getting what he wanted. When the time came, no one competed with Li Zhirui, and Ziyan couldn't wait to decide who the scroll belonged to, and then took out the next auction item. This was an extremely rare sword box magic weapon, which contained 18 spiritual swords. The main sword was a second-level inferior sword, and the other 17 secondary swords were first-level superior swords. The price was very expensive, but it was highly sought after by monks, which dispelled the coldness brought to the auction by the previous two spiritual objects. Li Zhirui got what he wanted and took the scroll. If it wasn't for not attracting attention, he wanted to get the scroll now to avoid more trouble. Chapter 38 End. After the sword box was taken by someone with 10,000 spirit stones, Ziyan changed her charming temperament and became dignified. The charm technique is perfect. The slightly knowledgeable cultivators saw this scene and showed a trace of surprise in their eyes. The charm technique is a minor art with few practitioners, and the difficulty of practicing this method is not low. It is very rare to practice it to perfection. I didn't expect to see it at an auction. However, for the auction items that Ziyan took out next, this ripple was instantly covered by a storm. Foundation building pill. Yuan Mingzong took out 3 foundation building pills at once. Even Li Zhirui and the other two who felt that they had no chance of getting the foundation building pill showed a hint of enthusiasm in their eyes. In fact, most cultivators knew in their hearts that this foundation building pill was destined to be out of their reach, because the high price was not something that they, the lonely people, could afford. but it did not prevent them from being excited about it. Although the foundation building pill was only a second-level spiritual pill, its preciousness was definitely superior to ordinary third-level spiritual objects. Because the spiritual medicine for refining the foundation building pill was blocked by all the major forces, although the world is so big that there may be spiritual medicines in the wild, it is not easy to find a spiritual medicine. If you want to get spiritual medicine, you must at least be a giant in force to be qualified, and you have to pay a huge price. This is the case with Yuanming sect. After Zhang Xianming broke through the Jiandan, he did 3 things for the leader of Yuanming sect, Shen Lishan, and then he got the spiritual seeds and pill formula, so that he could refine the foundation building pill alone. In fact, in addition to taking the foundation building pill, cultivators who want to build a foundation can also refine some strange spiritual objects or break through on their own. The reason why the foundation building pill is sought after by the world is that taking the foundation building pill to break through can greatly increase the success rate of the breakthrough, and even if the breakthrough fails, you can use the power of the spiritual pill to protect the meridians and anshan, and there will be no damage to the foundation. The success rate of the breakthrough method of refining spiritual objects is only half of that of the foundation building pill, so the price is relatively cheap, and most casual cultivators use this method to break through. As for self-breakthrough, this method is not only extremely difficult, but also very dangerous. Once the breakthrough fails, the foundation will be broken. No cultivator will choose this method unless it is a last resort. It is said that there are secret methods for self-foundation in various major forces, but this is not something that ordinary people can get. I believe that all Taoist friends know the effect of the foundation building pill, so I won't say any more nonsense. Ziyan looked at the hot atmosphere in the auction hall and said directly, "The highest bidder wins." There is no starting price or minimum bid, because Ziyan is not worried that the foundation building pill will be bought at a low price. 40,000 spirit stones. A certain foundation building cultivator opened his mouth. Which was the price that the Li family bought a foundation building pill from the beast taming sect in the past. Li Shilian's face sank instantly. He thought that the price of the foundation building pill in Yunping's Hao would be higher than that of the beast taming sect, but he didn't expect that the starting price would be their transaction price. And this is just the beginning. In the next short a quarter of an hour, the price of the foundation building pill continued to rise until it reached a sky-high price of 68,000 spirit stones. 70,000 spirit stones. Li Shilian's expression changed drastically. He originally thought that with the current speed at which the family earned spirit stones, as long as they accumulated for 1 or 2 years, they would be able to gather enough spirit stones. But now it seems that he still thought too simply. Li Zhirui's face was also not very good, because the family's next foundation building pill was prepared for him. You don't need to worry about this matter. The family will prepare enough spirit stones. What you have to do is to practice hard and break through the 9th level of key training as soon as possible. Li Shilian turned and said to Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui remained silent, but under the pressure of Li Shilian's sharp eyes, he could only purse his lips and nod. The price of the next 2 foundation building pills was almost the same as the price of the first one. After coming to Yunping's Hao for so long, this is the first time I find that the past is not without benefits, Li Shiren said with a wry smile. After all, he was outside and worried that there were ears on the other side of the wall, so Li Shiren spoke very obscurely, but Li Zhirui and Li Shilian understood. However, if they really had to choose, no one would be willing to go back to the past, because under the rule of the Beastmaster sect, the Li family would never have the opportunity to grow and develop. As the 3 foundation building pills were auctioned, many cultivators present were very curious about the next auction items, wanting to see what kind of spiritual objects were more precious than the foundation building pills. This time, Ziyan did not take out the spiritual objects one by one, but directly placed all 3 auction items on the table. A spiritual sword with sword energy, a jade slip with Taoism, and a seal that suppresses all things. These are the 3 finale spiritual objects carefully prepared by Yuan Mingzhuang. This sword is called Changhong. It is a 3rd-grade top-grade magic weapon. It was forged by the weapon master Ouyang using meteorite iron and solar spirit stone. It contains 3 magic spells and is incredibly powerful. I believe that fellow Taoists find this sword familiar, because it is the sword of the Changhong sword master, and according to rumors, the Changhong sword is related to the inheritance of the Changhong sword master. As soon as Ziyan finished speaking, the scene became quiet. It was not because they were calm, but because they were shocked by Yuan Mingzhuang's generosity. Yuan Mingzhuang is so willing to give it up. A certain white-haired giant on the third floor had a hint of doubt in his voice. He knew the origin of the Changhong sword better than others, and the Changhong sword master was a sword immortal who roamed the eastern region hundreds of years ago. The so-called sword immortal does not mean that his cultivation has broken through the fairyland, but is a respectful title for giant and sword cultivators who have a sword heart. All the cultivators who can get the title of sword immortal are at the top of the golden core realm. It is not impossible for them to cross the border and kill the enemy. Of course, this refers to the Yuanying who has just broken through. After introducing the Changhong sword, Ziyan did not rush to auction it, but introduced the next auction item, the jade slip full of Taoist meaning. This jade slip contains a complete set of exercises that directly point to the golden core realm. This sentence was like a thunder, suddenly exploding in everyone's ears, and everyone looked at Ziyan as if they had seen a ghost. Yuan Mingzhuang did not choose to hide the exercises that can be cultivated to the golden core realm, but took them out for auction. How can this not be shocking? Although Yuan Mingzhuang may have copied the exercises, if the exercises are leaked, it is very likely that hostile forces will find out the hidden dangers and weaknesses in them, which is absolutely a disaster for a force. Unless there are defects in the exercises, or Yuan Mingzhuang does not intend to let too many disciples practice this kind of exercises. This technique is called eating qi to contain Dan Sutra. The mana of cultivation is peaceful. After the deduction of the sect, this method can increase the possibility of cultivators forming Dan. As for the disadvantage, it is that the cultivation speed is too slow. It is best not to conceal the disadvantages of spiritual objects of this level, because those who are qualified to buy them are not easy to mess with. After listening to Ziyan's introduction, everyone calmed down. No wonder Yuan Mingzhuang was willing to auction it. As for the last seal, its origin is also very extraordinary. It turned out to be a 4th-level magic weapon with a dropped grade. Although the grade has dropped, its power is stronger than most 3rd-level magic weapons. These 3 treasures have nothing to do with the Li family and the cultivators on the 1st and 2nd floors, because the ones who competed for them were the giant and cultivators on the 3rd floor. In the end, all 3 treasures were sold for more than 80,000 spirit stones. The highest price was not the technique and seal, but the Changhong sword that contained the inheritance of a sword fairy. Thank you for the reward from Jirzulao. Thank you for your support. Chapter 39 Transaction. To thank you all for your support for this auction, I, Yuan Mingzhuang, will present you with a green beef stew, and the auction house will not be closed tonight, allowing you to trade on your own. Ziyan bowed softly and turned to walk into the backstage. At the same time, the servants who had been prepared long ago came out with a jade plate with 6 green beef stews, and presented one to each cultivator present. What a big hand Yuan Mingzhuang has, Li Zhirui said with emotion. As a beast control family, he certainly knew about the green beef, and it was precisely because he knew that he was so surprised. Although the green beef is only a 1st-level spirit beast, its flesh and blood contains a trace of vitality and wood energy. It is best at nourishing the body and restoring vitality. There are even rumors that eating a 3rd-level green beef can extend one's life by 60 years. There are thousands of cultivators present, and each of them needs to slaughter at least a dozen green cows for a green beef stew, and its value is probably not less than 10,000 spirit stones. If I had known that there would be such a benefit, I should have brought more clansmen to participate and let them taste the taste of this green beef. Li Zhirui smiled. Soon, the door of the compartment was pushed open, and it was the elegant female cultivator again. In her hand, in addition to the 3 green cow stews, there was also the scroll that Li Zhirui had been thinking about. Li Zhirui took the scroll, but the spirit stone flew out of Li Zhilian's sleeve, which also avoided people knowing that Li Zhirui was the real owner of the scroll. The door closed. Li Zhirui suppressed his inner excitement, walked in front of Li Zhilian, and silently uttered a few words, which made his eyes full of brilliance, and it took a long time to calm down. The reason why Li Zhirui wanted to take a picture of this unknown scroll was because he found that the divine tortoise in the scroll contained a visualization method, and the scroll was a visualization map. This method is called Divine Turtle Sea Suppression Map, and the method of cultivation is to visualize the divine tortoise, outline the body of the divine tortoise in the sea of consciousness, so as to suppress the sea of consciousness and resist the inner demon. However, Li Zhirui only took a quick look, and he was in the outside world, so he did not dare to study it in depth, and he was not clear about the specific method of cultivation. The reason why Li Zhirui was excited was also very simple, that is, the visualization method can be used to strengthen the soul. The stronger the soul, the more benefits it brings to the cultivator, such as being able to better control oneself, speed up the operation of the skills, not be confused by external things, and strengthen the heart of Tao. Although there is no shortage of methods to strengthen the soul in the world of immortal cultivation, the visualization method is the most moderate and peaceful. If Yuan Mingzhuang knew that this scroll was a visualization method, I don't know if they would regret it. Li Zhirui thought to himself. And among so many cultivators present, why was only Li Zhirui found out? One is his chance. The second is because Li Zhirui's contracted spirit beast attacking made him feel a little bit of the divine turtle picture and glimpse the real treasure. Li Zhirui finished the green ox stew in 2 or 3 bites, and a vitality was born from his body. But it soon dissipated. It's not that the green ox stew is useless, but Li Zhirui is not yet 20 years old, with sufficient blood and vitality. Of course, it may also be because the amount is too small and the vitality is too weak. As for Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui, this green ox stew can only satisfy their appetite. Let's go down and take a look, maybe we can get a 3rd level water attributed monster egg. Although they said so, in fact, the 3 of them knew that there was little hope. When the 3 of them came to the 1st floor, many cultivators had already completed the transaction. There were many cultivators standing on the auction table, holding their spiritual objects in exchange for cultivation resources that would be beneficial to themselves. The 2nd level lightning stone contains vigorous thunder power, which can assist in the cultivation of thunder methods and can also speed up the cultivation speed of cultivators with thunder spiritual roots. In exchange for a 2nd level lotus heart pill, when Li Zhirui heard the 3 words lotus heart pill, he looked at the cultivator with some curiosity, because the lotus heart pill only had the function of clearing the demonic energy, and someone was injured by the demon cultivator. However, Li Zhirui quickly retracted his gaze. He was not interested in the lightning stone, and he did not have a lotus heart pill in his hand, and he did not want to know his story. 10 1st level ice silkworms, exchanged for an equivalent amount of spiritual pills for cultivation. The ice silk spitted by the ice silkworm is the best spiritual silk for making 1st level robes, which is much more precious than the white silkworms cultivated by the Li family. However, the ice silkworm has very high requirements for the growth environment, and it needs a place with snow all year round to spin silk. 2 bottles of water to refine the jade elixir. In exchange for your 10 ice silkworms, Li Zhirui walked up to the cultivator. In the tall mountain range east of the big Banyan Island, there is a 1,500-foot high peak. The top of the mountain is a place where ice and snow never melt all year round. The only problem is that the spiritual energy in the place is thin, and spiritual stones are needed to set up the formation, and then you have to go up and exchange spiritual stones every once in a while. Okay, the man agreed without hesitation, and then hesitantly transmitted his voice. I still have a lot of ice silkworms and ice heartgrass seeds. Do you want more? Li Zhirui's expression did not change, and he also transmitted his voice. The price of ice silkworms remains unchanged. As for ice heartgrass seeds, 1 bottle of Yulingdan can be exchanged for 50 grass seeds. Ice heartgrass, a 1st level spiritual grass, is considered a spiritual grass that accompanies ice silkworms. Silkworms eat spiritual herbs to survive, and spiritual herbs need silkworm feces to reproduce. But in addition to feeding ice silkworms, ice heartgrass has another use, which is to weave ice heart cushions. This thing can resist inner demons, but the effect is very weak. Okay, this person was born as a casual cultivator. By chance, he climbed the Great Snow Mountain and discovered these 2 spiritual objects. The silk and mature ice heartgrass had been sold long ago. But no one has been interested in silkworm seeds and grass seeds. He originally just wanted to try. But he didn't expect that someone would really want them, and it was the Li family who has become famous recently. After the 2 had completed the transaction, the monk quietly hid in the crowd. As a foundation-building monk, Li Zhirui did not have to worry about getting into trouble by buying some 1st-level spiritual objects. In the following trade fairs, the Li family did not gain anything, but when he thought of the scroll of divine turtle picture bought by Li Zhirui, Li Zhirui did not feel regretful. My Li family wants to purchase a 3rd-level water-attributed monster as a guardian beast. The better the qualifications, the higher the price. When the sky was blue, Li Zhirui stood on the auction platform, but he did not take out the spiritual objects for trading. Instead, he asked the monks present to buy a third-level monster. This third-level monster refers to monster eggs or cubs. Otherwise, with the strength of the Li family, it is impossible to subdue a third-level monster. Of course, it is impossible for the monks present to catch a third-level monster. Li Zhirui did not want to make such a big fuss. After all, there are still a group of disciples of the beast-taming sect who are fleeing outside, and no one knows whether they are nearby. If the news of the Li family's purchase of spiritual beasts reaches their ears, they may discover the origin of the Li family. However, it is difficult to find a third-level monster egg. The Li family alone may not be able to get what they want in 3 years. After thinking about it, Li Zhirui had to rely on the help of other cultivators. Moreover, Yunping's Hao is close to the infinite sea, and the most abundant thing is water-attributed monsters. Maybe a lucky cultivator has obtained a third-level water-attributed monster egg. If the Li family can acquire 2 or even more third-level monsters, it would be great. Although the clan members with better qualifications for the third-level monster contract are more suitable, it is not impossible to sign a contract with clan members with slightly worse qualifications. Doing so can also speed up the cultivation of these clan members and enhance the overall strength of the Li family. Chapter 40 Cooperation. After announcing what the Li family wanted, Li Zhirui took Li Zhirui and the other 2 out of the auction. Some cultivators saw the 3 people leaving without hiding, and their eyes flickered, as if they had other ideas, but thinking that the other party had 2 foundation-building cultivators, they finally chose not to follow. However, not everyone is so cautious and can suppress their greed. In a corner where no one noticed, 2 foundation-building cultivators with similar appearances followed. Brother Husha, a cultivator, noticed this scene and showed a hint of surprise on his face. I don't know if the 3 cultivators of the Li family can still survive. These 2 are the famous foundation-building cultivators in Yunping's Hao. Because they are from the same family and have obtained an opportunity, they have cultivated a combined attack technique with terrifying power. Therefore, although they are only in the early stage of foundation building, many people in the middle stage of foundation building have died at their hands. Even if the 2 foundation-building cultivators of the Li family are strong, it may be difficult to get away with a burden of key training. Uncle Zhirui, someone is following us. Li Zhirui faintly sensed a little aura and immediately told Li Zhirui about it. Li Zhirui had already noticed it, and murderous intent appeared in his eyes. He said coldly, since they want to follow, let them follow. It was also a good opportunity to show the strength of the Li family, so that people would not always think that the Li family is strong on the outside but weak on the inside and look down on the Li family. The conversation between the 2 did not hide Li Zhirui, and in the face of this change, Li Zhirui was very calm, or he had guessed that this situation would happen. Not to mention whether the identities of the 3 people were exposed in the private room. Just before leaving, the purchase of the third-level monster beast was enough to attract some greedy cultivators. After all, how could you come to the auction to buy a third-level monster beast without enough spirit stones? The spirit ship sped away, but did not get rid of the tiger demon brothers. Even after entering the sea, the 2 no longer concealed their figures, and it was obvious that they wanted to kill the 3 people of the Li family. Why did the 2 Taoist friends chase here so hard? Li Zhirui said helplessly. Ho-ha, since you know you can't escape, why don't you surrender obediently? Then we 2 brothers will give you a decent show, the arrogant little tiger said with an extremely arrogant attitude, not taking Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui, who were both building their foundations, seriously. Li Zhirui sighed and said, I pity you 2 Taoist friends for practicing hard for decades, but today it will all be burned to ashes. Humph. You still want to kill us 2 brothers with your strength? What a foolish dream. Xiaohu sneered, drew out the tiger soul sword, and leaped up suddenly, like a tiger descending from the mountain, carrying the tiger's great power to pounce on Li Zhirui. As a cultivator, you practice secular swordsmanship, which is really ridiculous. Li Zhirui's 10 fingers flew, and a flying sword condensed from earth and stone took shape in the blink of an eye. A heavy but sharp aura emerged, and he arrived first, carrying the power of the mountain rock and directly smashed the man away. However, Li Zhirui did not pursue the victory, because the other big tiger moved, also with a tiger soul blade, but did not chop up, but emerged with a little black light, turned into a group of fierce ghosts, and surrounded Li Zhirui. The tiger soul blade in your hand is actually integrated with a tiger demon spirit. Li Zhirui's face showed a trace of surprise. This precious magic weapon actually fell into the hands of a casual cultivator like him. Die, As the big tiger urged the magic weapon, the tiger soul blade, which flashed with a little cold light, completely turned black, and the blade's surface appeared with a trace of evil spirit, which was filled into the ghost's body and strengthened the ghost's strength. For a time, surrounded by a large number of ghosts, Li Zhirui could only barely hold on. The shaky posture made the big tiger laugh out loud. It was a pity that the temporary advantage blinded his eyes, and he did not realize that the reason why Li Zhirui was so embarrassed was entirely to protect Li Zhirui so as not to disturb his formation. But now the time bought for Li Zhirui is enough. Li Zhirui threw out a formation plate, and the formation flags were positioned. As the spell was cast quickly, a second-level golden wind formation was set up in just a few breaths, trapping the two brothers Hu Shen in the formation. Not good. As soon as the formation was formed, Dahu knew that he was being calculated, and this formation was extremely powerful. If they were trapped in it, they would probably die here. Second brother, use all your strength to perform the Tiger Evil Devil attack. Dahu knew that this was their only chance to escape. If this couldn't break the formation, then they would have no choice but to die. The Tiger Evil brothers were connected by the same womb, and their spirits merged into one. At the same time, they raised the Tiger Soul Sword, poured in their whole body magic power, and merged a large number of ghosts. Suddenly, a powerful sword light slashed at the formation. Jin Yu, fan the wind. Li Zhirui's face changed slightly, and he immediately summoned the jade-billed eagle. He saw its magic power gathered in its wings, and it suddenly fanned the formation. A strong wind gradually rose, and a layer of land on the deserted island was cut off. Under Li Zhirui's control, such a powerful gust of wind was fully integrated into the golden wind formation, turning into countless wind blades that shot at the sword light, trying to weaken the power of the sword light, but unfortunately the effect was minimal. Attack the two monks. Li Zhirui, who was watching outside the formation, suddenly said. Li Zhirui instantly understood and shouted, Golden Feather, shocking god. Li Zhirui also manipulated the formation, using the golden wind to transform into a variety of weapons, with the momentum of a white tiger, carrying the terror of the Beast King coming down the mountain, and pounced on the Tiger brothers. At the same time, a long cry that resounded through the sky exploded in the formation, and with the help of the gust of wind, it echoed endlessly. This was a very crude combined attack method deduced by Li Zhirui and Yu Zhang, but even so, the power was extraordinary, and it forcibly beat the two people who were trapped in the mysterious state out. And the combined attack method driven by the momentum of the two people suddenly dropped in power as the two separated, and finally turned into ashes in the endless wind blades. As soon as the two separated, Li Zhirui raised his hand and sent an unstoppable golden wind, preventing the two from getting closer. Damn it, this man is so powerful, but why haven't I heard of his name? Dahu gritted his teeth and said. If he had known that Li Zhirui was a formation master, and that the originally ordinary golden wind formation could exert such terrible power in his hands, he would never have followed. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as knowing in advance, let alone regret medicine. Since they dared to follow, they should be prepared to fall after failure. Although they could not see where the chance of survival was, the Tiger Evil brothers were unwilling to give in and were still fighting hard. It's just that their strength was getting weaker and weaker, and their injuries were getting more and more. Now it was just a meaningless struggle before death. Soon, the two died with hatred, and their eyes were full of regret and unwillingness. After a little preparation on the battlefield, Li Zhirui drove the spirit ship, turned into a flashing meteor, and took the other two back to the Banyan Island at the fastest speed. He was worried that there were still monks hiding nearby. This is also the reason why Li Zhirui did not take action and let Li Zhirui face the Tiger Demon brothers alone. He had to guard against possible enemies. Fortunately, except for the Tiger Demon brothers, no other monks blocked their way, allowing the three of them to return to Banyan Island smoothly. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 41 The Turtle. Are you ambushed again? Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui, whose aura was agitated, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. If the Li family had not just arrived in Yunping's house and was afraid of Yuan Mingzong, Li Zhirui would have wanted to destroy the three families in the east. Although he has not had much time to practice in recent years and his cultivation has not improved much, his cultivation in the late stage of foundation building and his spiritual beast King Tong Tiger in the late stage of foundation building can completely defeat the three families one by one as long as he pays a little affordable price. It was to greedy and ignorant casual cultivators who wanted to kill people and steal treasures by relying on their secret methods. Li Zhirui roughly described the situation on the road. "Second brother, please activate the main hall formation," Li Zhirui said solemnly. Li Shiking's heart moved, and he immediately activated the formation, including the main hall in the formation, isolating it from the outside world. "This matter is related to Zhirui, let him come to talk to you." Li Zhirui took a step to the right and highlighted Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui first took out the scroll from the storage bag. Although he knew that the scroll was not an ordinary object, he was still very careful in his every move. "Chief, this is a scroll of visualization that I found by chance at the auction. It contains a visualization method called the divine turtle suppressing the sea." Li Shiking, who originally thought that the divine turtle was lifelike, changed his expression. After Li Zhirui's reminder, he immediately immersed his powerful consciousness into a piece of the divine turtle's shell to verify the authenticity of what Li Zhirui said. Li Zhirui didn't care about Li Shiking's direct comprehension, because he never thought of monopolizing the visualization method. If he really wanted to monopolize it, he would not tell Li Zhirui the secret of the scroll at the auction. But he would never let this scroll go. At most, he would allow the tribesmen to observe the scroll, understand the true meaning, and transform the inner scene of the divine turtle suppressing the sea in the sea of consciousness, but the scroll could only belong to him. After a moment, Li Shiking pulled himself out of the scroll, with a smile on his face, and said, "It's really a visualization method. It should have the effect of suppressing the inner demon, second brother." Then, thinking of the ownership of the divine turtle picture, Li Zhirui swallowed the rest of the words and used the sound transmission technique to tell the other party that the scroll was bought by Li Zhirui with the family's spiritual stones. Practicing this visualization method is beneficial to him and other clansmen, but Li Shiking is a little embarrassed to ask Li Zhirui for it. "I can give the visualization method to the family, and agree that the clansmen can observe the scroll to practice, but the owner of this thing must be me," Li Zhirui said at the right time. "Okay," Li Shiking agreed without hesitation and said, "In order to reward you for your great contribution to the family, all the spiritual stones you borrowed will be waived." "Thank you, clan leader." Li Zhirui did not refuse. Doing so would benefit both parties, and he couldn't come up with so many spiritual stones in a short time. "You can hang the divine turtle picture in the Sutra library during the day. But I want to take it back at night to assist my own practice." Li Zhirui made a request. This is what should be done. You can't let Li Zhirui practice in the Sutra library at night, right? If something goes wrong and the classics in the Sutra library are destroyed, it will not be a good thing for the Li family and Li Zhirui. "Leave the scroll in my hands for a while, and I will return it to you after I comprehend the visualization method of divine turtle suppressing the sea." It's not that Li Shiking wants to embezzle the scroll, but he wants to perfect this method to facilitate the practice of the clan members. Li Zhirui nodded, and saw Li Shiren was still immersed in shock. He looked at him with a little apology. It's not that he deliberately deceived Li Shiren, but the visualization of the picture is of great importance, and the fewer people in the outside world know about it, the better. Then Li Zhirui told Li Shiking what they saw and heard at the auction, the most important of which was the expensive price of the foundation building pill. 80,000 spirit stones. Li Shiking's face changed slightly. Although the grocery store and Yancheng Lao can be said to be making a fortune every day, it will take several years to save so many spirit stones. After all, maintaining a large family is also a considerable expense. Li Shiking thought about it inside. We still have to find a way to train more people who can refine the jade spirit pill. He didn't ask them to become alchemists, but only hoped that they could learn to refine the jade spirit pill with the family's investment regardless of cost. This is the best option that Li Shiking can think of. The Li family has a total of 3 second-level inheritances, namely beast control, formation, and spiritual plants. Beast control is related to the foundation of the family, and the first-level spirit beasts cultivated, after being made into spiritual food by Yancheng Lao, have earned a lot of spirit stones for the family, but now it has reached the limit. First, because the spiritual energy on the Banyan Island is limited, there is no way to expand the scale of spirit beasts. Second, the business scale of Yancheng Lao. Although there are many monks coming and going in the market, the price of spiritual food is not cheap, and it is impossible to consume it frequently. Finally, there is another very important reason. There is a new restaurant in the market. Xiankale opened in the previous Yinxiank restaurant. Because of its low price, it attracted some customers from Yancheng Lao. Of course, you get what you pay for. The taste and spiritual energy of Xiankale's spiritual food are not as good as Yunchang Lao, so although there is a threat, it is not great. As for formations and spiritual plants, there is not much demand for formations among casual cultivators on the market, and spiritual plants are used for alchemy and cultivating spiritual beasts, so they cannot be sold on a large scale. Therefore, if the family wants to earn more spiritual stones, they can only think of ways to make alchemy, and water-refined jade spirit pills are the best choice. It is easy to refine, and the market demand is huge. More importantly, the price is not low. In the face of Li Shiking's sigh, Li Zhirui did not speak, because he had already handed over all his experience and techniques in refining the jade spirit pill to the family, and with the more experienced alchemy elder Li Shai, he could not help much. But recently, water-refined pills have also begun to appear on the market. Li Shilian showed a hint of depression on his face. Li Zhirui and Li Shiren, who also knew about this for the first time, were slightly moved, but their reactions were different. The former was thoughtful, while the latter frowned. Before the Li family took out the jade spirit pill, there was no water-refined pill in Yunping's house. It was not that those forces did not know that water-refined pills were better, but the investment cost was large and the refining difficulty was high. Fire-refined pills could also earn a lot of spiritual stones, not to mention that they already had rich experience in this area, so naturally they had never thought of learning water refining. But now it is different. With the emergence of the Li family, various water-refined pills with better effects and less elixir poison have emerged, and the prices are the same as those of fire-refined pills. It is normal for water-refined pills to be sought after by cultivators. But this will make other forces suffer. The market share is largely occupied by the Li family. If it were not for the small number of water-refined pills, many shops selling pills would have to close due to poor business. When they are poor, they will think of change. These forces have begun to learn water refining methods. After several months, they have finally produced results. It's okay. The market for water refined pills is huge, and we can't take it all, Li Shiking said meaningfully. Sometimes, it's not a good thing for one family to dominate, especially before the Li family has strong enough strength. If they don't know how to restrain themselves and give in, they may be attacked by other forces. Li Shilian and Li Shiren's expressions changed slightly. He only saw that the interests of the Li family were damaged, but he didn't see the hidden crisis. Li Zhirui only felt that the appearance of water-refined pills from other forces on the market would not lead to a reduction in the income of the Li family, at least not at present. But Li Shiking thought deeper and farther. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Discovery. The first thing Li Zhirui did after returning to the courtyard was to check Daking's condition. Seeing that his breath was calm and no different from before, he rested at ease. At the same time, Li Shiren and Li Shilian flew to the top of Beitao Mountain. The former arranged the gathering spirit formation, and the latter planted the ice heart grass, then extracted the spirit energy from the spirit stone, turned it into a drizzle, nourished the ice heart grass spirit seeds, and finally released the ice silkworms. I remember that there are several first-level water-attributed spirit fruit trees in the family. Before the ice heartgrass grows up, feed them with spirit fruits, Li Shilian asked. How often do you change the spirit stones in the gathering spirit formation? About 3 months. Speaking of it, it is still quite troublesome for the Li family to cultivate these ice silkworms, because on the Banyan Island, there is only the top of Beitao Mountain, where snow is accumulated all year round, but this mountain is too high, and the key training cultivators can't fly up at all. They can only fly to 1,000 feet and then climb the mountain on their legs. Foundation building cultivators can fly up, but the 4 foundation building cultivators in the family are all very busy and have no time to feed the ice silkworms. Fortunately, this situation will not last long. It will only take 5 months for the ice heartgrass to grow. At that time, there will be no need to go up the mountain frequently to feed the ice silkworms. It is only necessary to come up every once in a while to replace the spirit stones in the spirit gathering array. Go down the mountain slowly and find a convenient way to climb the mountain. Li Shiren nodded, and then controlled the spirit boat to slowly descend. After searching for a while, He finally found a flat slope on the west side of the mountainside of Baitao Mountain. It is easier to walk up from here. After resting, Li Zhirui was not in a hurry to comprehend the new alchemy technique, but was thinking about one thing. At present, he has seen the fighting methods of the 3 foundation building cultivators in the family. All of them cooperate with their own spirit beasts to exert more powerful strength. So Li Zhirui was thinking about how he should cooperate with Daking to enhance his own strength. As a member of the Kingsong Turtle clan, Daking can learn water and wood magic from his blood. However, because he rarely fights with others, Li Zhirui is not very clear about what magic Daking has mastered. The lethality of water and wood magic is not as good as that of metal and fire, and the defense is not as good as that of earth, but it is not without its own advantages. Li Zhirui analyzed calmly, or, the disadvantages of water and wood magic are their advantages. They are not as extreme as the other 3 elements, but more comprehensive, and Daking, as a turtle, moves slowly, has a peaceful temperament, and does not like fighting, but can be used for defense or to assist me. As soon as the thought came to mind, many ideas came out immediately, allowing Li Zhirui to have a preliminary method of cooperation. However, how to do it specifically will have to wait for Daking to finish molting and try it yourself. Li Zhirui suppressed the thought, silently chanted the Kingsin mantra, and kept his mind peaceful before taking out the alchemy method and began to comprehend the Yangdanju and Kidanju. In the backyard of the main hall, Li Shiking hung the picture of the divine turtle in front of him, but he was not in a hurry to comprehend it. Instead, he adjusted his state to perfection by burning incense and bathing, and combined with the Kingsin mantra, and then put his consciousness into the painting. In the painting, the divine tortoise's back flickered with a spiritual light, but it disappeared in a moment, as if it had never appeared. In the painting, Li Shiking saw the growth process of a divine tortoise, crawling out from the ground with the many brothers and sisters, escaping the capture of birds in the sky, and surviving several near-death experiences in the sea. I don't know how many years have passed, the divine tortoise has grown into a giant. One day, the sea where he was suddenly rioted, and the waves dozens of feet high continued, and it also bred more terrifying sea tornadoes. Roar, the divine tortoise was awakened from its slumber by the huge waves, and angrily floated out of the sea, turning into a giant tortoise that was tens of thousands of miles in size. The long roar tore through the storm and the air, and the forelegs shook towards the turbulent sea surface. The rioting sea surface calmed down instantly, as if the scene of the destruction just now was just an illusion. As Li Shiking watched all this, he had some enlightenment in his heart, and a visualization method was slowly injected into his sea of consciousness. When the last word appeared, Li Shiking suddenly woke up, his eyes sparkling, and his face was full of smiles. This visualization method called Divine Turtle Sea Suppression Map is far more powerful than he thought. If it can be refined to perfection and cultivate the inner scene, it can not only suppress the sea of consciousness and resist the inner demons, but also launch a spiritual attack. However, in this way, the preciousness of this visualization method will be raised to a higher level. Before the Li family is strong enough, it is impossible to let all disciples practice this method. Because the visualization method is not too precious, but most of the visualization methods on the market only have the function of protecting the sea of consciousness and strengthening the soul, and have little effect on resisting the inner demons. The Divine Turtle Map can not only resist the inner demons, but also launch a spiritual attack, so the preciousness of this method has increased immediately. But, Li Shiking frowned slightly, and some doubts arose in his heart. He just probed his spiritual consciousness into the scroll and knew that there was a visualization method in it. He immersed his spiritual consciousness in it and realized the method. Why didn't Yuan Mingzong do it? Those monks at the auction didn't do it? What Li Shiking didn't know was that the little bit of spiritual light that concealed the secret of the god turtle picture had been absorbed by Li Zhirui after he got the scroll. To be more precise, it should have been absorbed by the soul of Daking in Li Zhirui's sea of consciousness. No matter how Li Shiking thought, he would not think of Li Zhirui, because he was just a cultivator of qi. How could he have such a powerful method? Fortunately, Li Shiking did not dwell on this matter too much, and immediately called Li Shilian, Li Shiren and Li Zhirui with a family jade card. Li Shiking planned to temporarily conceal the god turtle picture and the visualization method, and only let a very small number of people know about it. In his imagination, in addition to the 3 people called now, only Li Shiting could know and practice the visualization method. In other words, before the Li family is strong enough, only by breaking through the foundation building can this visualization method be practiced. The three of them quickly came to the main hall, and Li Shiking took out 3 jade slips and said very seriously, "After you write down this method, destroy the jade slips." "Second brother, what are you doing?" Li Zhirui keenly noticed that Li Shiking's attitude towards the visualization method had changed dramatically. This visualization method has the art of spiritual attack. In order not to attract the covetousness of others, it can only be practiced by the foundation building clan members in a short period of time. The faces of the 3 people changed. The art of spiritual attack can be said to be the most precious magic, second only to the magical power that can only be practiced by Yuanying cultivators. You can imagine how precious this method is. If this news is leaked, the Li family will definitely be in danger. Zhirui, this divine tortoise picture does not need to be put in the Sutra Pavilion. It is directly kept by you, but you must not take it out of the big Banyan Island. In fact, Li Shiking wanted to leave the divine tortoise picture in the backyard, which is safer and the probability of leaking the news is lower. But after thinking about it, Li Shiking gave up. After all, this is Li Zhirui's opportunity. He is willing to hand over the visualization method to the family and allow the clan members to observe the divine tortoise picture. The family has already owed him a lot. If Li Shiking grabs the divine tortoise picture in his hand again, although he has no intention of occupying this thing, the actual owner has become him. What will Li Zhirui, who has obtained the opportunity, think? So in the end, Li Shiking chose to return the scroll to Li Zhirui and let him keep it. Zhirui understands. Li Shiking nodded and said, "In the next few days, you can practice the visualization method with the help of the divine turtle picture in the main hall." After that, Li Shiking led the 3 people into the backyard. Looking at the lifelike divine turtle in the painting, the 3 adjusted their state and put their spiritual consciousness into it one after another. Although they could observe it with their naked eyes, doing so would be more conducive to their practice of visualization. And this is why Li Zhirui wanted to hold the scroll in his own hands before. Thank you for the reward from Zhou University Scholar. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 43 Awakening. Li Zhirui and the other 2 were immersed in the painting. The mysterious power contained in it took them to watch the life of the tortoise. The final scene was also frozen in the tortoise pacifying the sea. However, Li Shiking, who was protecting the 3 people in the outside world, found that there was an extremely dim and extinguished spiritual light flashing on the back of the tortoise. If it were not for the excellent eyesight of the cultivator, he would not have been able to find this spiritual light. What is that? Li Shiking frowned slightly, but he couldn't even figure out whether the spiritual light was good or bad. But thinking that he could get out of it smoothly and without any problems, it shouldn't be a bad thing, at least it wouldn't hurt the 3 people. After observing the tortoise in the painting for countless years, Li Zhirui had already understood the tortoise and began to formally practice the visualization method. The first step of the method is to visualize the island where the tortoise was born in the sea of consciousness. Visualization, in simple terms, is observation and imagination, careful observation, and then imagine it in the sea of consciousness. It's easy to say, but Li Zhirui has been unable to create an island in the sea of consciousness. Every time he visualizes the island, it will break, and the same is true for the other 2. Every time the island was broken, it would consume a lot of the cultivator's spiritual consciousness. Among them, Li Zhirui, who had the weakest spiritual consciousness, had to stop after only 2 failures. Half a quarter of an hour later, Li Shiren woke up, and another quarter of an hour later, Li Zhirui also opened his eyes. "I'm afraid it's not that easy to visualize the divine turtle," Li Shiking sighed. The divine turtle sea suppressing map is divided into 5 steps. Condensing the island is only the first step. There are also visualization of turtle eggs, the birth of the divine turtle entering the sea, and finally the divine turtle suppressing the sea. But it's normal to think about it. How can the visualization method with a method of spiritual consciousness attack be so easy to practice successfully? Your spiritual consciousness is too much? Go back and rest quickly. The visualization method is not so easy to learn, so don't rush it. You must not rush to practice, especially this kind of visualization method practiced in the sea of consciousness. If you are not careful, the end result will be that the soul is injured. Li Zhirui put away the scroll and left the backyard with the 2 elders. On the way, Li Zhirui asked, "Grandpa Shilian, when are you going to observe the divine turtle picture again? Then we will go to the clan leader together." Choosing the backyard might be a bit troublesome, but Li Zhirui didn't want to bring the 2 elders back to his small courtyard, because there were not many spiritual herbs planted in his courtyard. If they knew this, Li Zhirui would not be able to explain his alchemy in the future by saying that he had planted a few spiritual herbs in his courtyard. Let's go once every 7 days in the future. Li Zhilian turned his eyes to Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui was not unhappy about this. They hadn't even mastered the first step yet, so there was no need to observe the divine turtle picture every day. After agreeing on a time, the three of them separated. Practicing visualization consumes too much spiritual consciousness. Even Li Zhilian, who has the highest cultivation, can't stand it and wants to go back and rest as soon as possible. In the following months, Li Zhirui learned 2 alchemy techniques every day, and then visualized the island. If his spiritual consciousness was consumed too much, he would start to inhale and exhale spiritual energy for cultivation. Although his life was dull, Li Zhirui enjoyed it. Moreover, Li Zhirui discovered one thing, that is, after the spiritual consciousness was consumed, it would be enhanced by practicing to recover. Although the effect was very weak, dripping water wears away the stone. If you persist for many years, you will definitely see good results. After Li Zhirui discovered it, he immediately told Li Shiking and several elders, hoping to help them. As for visualizing the island, after several months of hard practice and Li Shiking's guidance, Li Zhirui had signs of success. As a late-stage foundation-building cultivator, Li Shiking's spiritual consciousness was far stronger than the others, and he also gave the power in his hands to the elders under the pretext of practicing in seclusion in the past few months. Standardize the duties of the elders, each of whom is in charge of a certain family affair, and then report to him once a month. The reason why he did this was because Li Zhilian found an opportunity to tell Li Shiking about a method proposed by Li Zhirui, and he thought this idea was very good. In the future, he would no longer need to be entangled in worldly affairs like before, and had no time to practice quietly. However, Li Shiking did not give the position of patriarch to Li Zhirui. It was not because he was greedy for power, but because Li Zhirui was really not suitable to be the patriarch. This was not arbitrary by Li Shiking, but a pertinent and correct judgment after he took Li Zhirui to deal with affairs for a period of time. There was no way. Before Li Zhirui grew up, the position of patriarch could only continue to be held by Li Shiking. One day, Li Zhirui, who was taking care of the spiritual medicine in the space, suddenly heard a faint cry and looked towards the spiritual lake with joy. Daking, who had been lying on the blue stone and had not moved for several months, looked up and looked around. When he saw Li Zhirui not far away, he shouted excitedly. Daking was originally shed in the outside world, but because Li Zhirui had been practicing visualization and comprehending the alchemy formula during this period, he was exhausted physically and mentally and really didn't want to move around, so he put him into the space. Finally, the shell was shed successfully. Li Zhirui walked quickly to Daking and saw Daking clearly after the shell was shed. The originally hard tortoise shell has now become a little soft, and the body is much smaller than before. Moreover, after this molting, Daking has broken through from the 4th level of key training to the 5th level of key training. However, because a lot of mana was consumed during the molting process, Daking now has the realm of the 5th level of key training, but does not have the corresponding mana. Li Zhirui didn't care about this. He had enough spiritual fruits and spiritual pills in his hand to allow Daking to recover quickly. Are you hungry? Li Zhirui knew what Daking wanted when he saw the eager eyes of Daking. He immediately took out a lot of spiritual fruits from the storage bag and said, if it's not enough, go to the hill to pick them later. Li Zhirui planted more than a dozen spiritual fruit trees in the space. There were not many, but they were enough for them to eat every year. Daking nodded obediently, and then buried his head in eating the spiritual fruits piled up in front of him. Why do I feel that Daking has become much smarter? Li Zhirui murmured to himself. But the classics did not say that the spiritual tortoise would increase its intelligence after shedding its shell. He really couldn't figure out what was going on, so Li Zhirui chose to let him go. Anyway, this was a good thing. The smarter Daking was, the better the cooperation between the two of them would be. After Li Zhirui dealt with the matter in the space, he found that Daking had fallen asleep. Although Daking successfully shed its shell, its body was still in a relatively weak state and it would take some time to recover. Putting down the newly picked spiritual fruit in front of Daking, Li Zhirui quietly left the space and prepared to start today's practice. A few days ago, he had a premonition that it would not take long for him to visualize an island. So these days, Li Zhirui paid special attention to the practice of visualization. Speaking of which, Li Zhirui's practice speed of visualization is not much slower than Li Zhirui, or the progress of the two is almost the same. As for the reason, it is still unknown. Li Zhirui sank his consciousness into the sea of consciousness, imagining the appearance of the Banyan Island. With his efforts, an island took shape in his sea of consciousness little by little. The reason why it was the Banyan Island was because Li Zhirui was most familiar with this island. Li Shiking and others also visualized the Banyan Island. After an unknown amount of time, Li Zhirui suddenly opened his eyes, finally succeeded. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 44, Leaving the Island. In the originally empty sea of consciousness, there is now an island that does not really exist. At the moment when the island took shape, Li Zhirui's heart suddenly became much calmer, and some complicated thoughts no longer emerged. Is this the benefit of visualization? And this is just the first step. Li Zhirui told Li Shiking the good news. He was sincerely happy for Li Zhirui and told Li Zhirui his cultivation experience. When practicing visualization, you must not rush, let alone delay your practice. After a warning, Li Shiking sent the man away and said to the empty room, I don't know if I can still see him achieve the golden elixir. Li Shiking is already more than 200 years old, and the lifespan of a foundation-building cultivator is 460 years. If he fails to break through the golden elixir, he will only have a few decades left. I hope Zhirui can break through the foundation as soon as possible, and then I can fight with confidence. The voice gradually faded away, and no more sound was heard. Time passed quickly, and more than a month passed quickly. Daking, who had successfully shed his shell, had fully recovered under the nourishment of a large number of spiritual fruits and spiritual pills. One day, Li Zhirui brought Daking to a deserted place and said, Daking, use all the spells you know. Before the monsters broke through the golden elixir and turned into human bodies, it was difficult for them to learn spells from the outside world because of their lack of intelligence. The spells they mastered were actually inherited from their blood. Under normal circumstances, as long as the monsters broke through a small realm, they could comprehend one or two spells. Daking responded and began to cast spells. A ball of water light gathered in his mouth. After 2 breaths of accumulation, a water arrow was released. The power was quite good and directly smashed a large stone into pieces. Next, Daking also demonstrated many water and wood spells such as water prison, water shield, wood armor, vine control, wood arrow, and intertwined roots. However, there were few attack spells, only a few such as water arrow and wood arrow. Most of them were spells used for control and defense. Thank you for your hard work. After casting all the spells, Daking's mana was running low. Li Zhirui hurriedly fed him a few pills of spiritual nourishment, then put him into the space and let him have a good rest. Li Zhirui sat on the ground, thinking about how he and Daking should cooperate to exert stronger combat power. Since Daking's combat power is not strong, I should learn more powerful spells, and then use Daking's defense and control spells. Li Zhirui kept perfecting his ideas until the sun set in the west, and then he woke up and returned to the courtyard. Early the next morning, Li Zhirui brought Daking to the wasteland of yesterday again. Daking, next we both have to train hard and improve our strength, Li Zhirui said seriously. As Li Zhirui's appearance and identity were known by more and more cultivators, he couldn't help but feel a sense of crisis in his heart, worrying that he would be targeted one day. The last time he fought with others, he encountered a few evil cultivators with low combat power, but what about the next time? Will he have such good luck? In order to save his life, Li Zhirui could only think of ways to enhance his own strength. Daking responded incomprehensibly. Today you will practice the 2 spells of water shield and roots and twisted joints. First speed up the casting speed, and then increase the power of the spells. After arranging Daking, Li Zhirui also began to practice spells. All the spells he practiced were powerful spells, such as Ice Blade, Needle Rain, and Leaf Picking and Flying Flowers. Li Zhirui pinched his hands and tried to condense a fine rain of needles. This was the basis for casting the needle rain. If even the fine rain could not be condensed, or the amount condensed was too small, the true power of the needle rain could not be exerted. This spell required extremely high control of mana, so that Li Zhirui practiced for several hours, pinching his fingers sore but still failed. Li Zhirui felt that he was not far from success and did not want to give up halfway. Daking, who was practicing next to him, saw the scene and dragged his heavy steps to continue practicing spells. After pinching out the spell again, Li Zhirui suddenly had a glimmer of enlightenment in his heart. A ball of spiritual light suddenly appeared in front of him. The next second, countless extremely fine needles flew out from it. When the spiritual light was exhausted, the fine rain of needles had already poked a 3-meter square hole in the ground. Li Zhirui was delighted. It was worth his hard work for a day. He finally succeeded. However, this can only be regarded as learning. If you want to use it in battle, you still need to practice hard, especially since his current casting speed is too slow. If you really fight with someone, even if the needle rain technique covers a large area, the opponent can easily dodge it. You have worked hard today. Li Zhirui forced himself to walk to Da Qing, who had already collapsed from exhaustion, with heartache in his eyes. However, as a cultivator, if you don't have a strong enough means to protect the way, one day you will become a dry bone on the road of seeking. Da Qing's response was barely detectable, which showed that he was really exhausted, but he didn't mean to give up. Li Zhirui smiled, touched Da Qing's tortoise shell, and let him go into the space to have a good rest, while he walked back to the courtyard slowly. In the next few months, Li Zhirui and Da Qing could be seen in the deserted wilderness. One man and one tortoise, from the initial training alone, slowly began to cooperate in casting spells, and now they have a tacit understanding with each other, and even Da Qing knows what spell to cast without Li Zhirui even speaking. Paper knowledge is shallow, and the effect can only be seen after actual combat. Li Zhirui looked at the vast sea, and he was ready to practice in the nearby sea. Although there are fewer water monsters in the offshore area, that is compared with a boundless sea. In fact, it is very easy to encounter water monsters dozens of miles away from the Banyan Island. This is also one of the reasons why Yunqingfang City can gather a large number of casual cultivators. If there were not a large number of water monsters in the sea, how could it support so many rootless casual cultivators? When Li Zhirui told Li Shiqing that he was going to go out for training, he not only did not object, but also encouraged Li Zhirui to go out to sea and improve his combat power through actual combat. I remember that there is a special demon hunting team in the market. You can find a suitable team. But the disadvantages of this team are also obvious. You must pay attention to it. When Li Shiqing was young, he also went to the outside world for training. Although many years have passed, he still remembers some things clearly. The team members have different origins and do not have much trust in each other. On the contrary, when encountering treasures, they are the first to be wary of these teammates. There is another situation, that is, the team has been established for a long time, and other monks are very familiar with it. You are the only stranger. When you encounter danger, you will be the first to be abandoned. Of course, it is not without benefits to team up with others for training. At least you are stronger. Before there is danger or conflict of interest, it will be safer than being alone. Patriarch, I want to practice fighting methods with Da Qing. Li Zhirui finally said what he had not said before. Li Shiqing frowned, but finally nodded in agreement. If a young eagle wants to soar into the sky, it has to jump off the cliff many times. If a person wants to grow up, how can he do it without going through hardships? Thank you for your support. Chapter 45 Experience. One morning, Li Zhirui left the Banyan Island in a ship, but he was not alone. He was accompanied by Da Qing. In order to save mana, the speed of the ship was not fast. Of course, the speed of the ship was not fast, but the large area and stronger made it easier for monks to fight water monsters. On the sea surface dozens of miles away from the Banyan Island, Li Zhirui encountered a fish monster in the early stage of key training. Before it could react, a water knife appeared and split it in half. In an instant, the nearby sea water was dyed red with blood. Oops, Li Zhirui saw this scene and his face changed slightly. He only wanted to solve the fish monster as soon as possible, but he forgot that the blood of the fish monster would spread in the sea and attract some vicious water monsters. Li Zhirui did not dare to stay in place for long, and hurriedly accelerated the speed of the ship to avoid being surrounded by water monsters. Not long after Li Zhirui left, a large number of water monsters came here, among which the strongest were two fish monsters in the late stage of key training. The empty sea made the two fish monsters very angry. In order to vent their anger or fill their stomachs, they began to turn around and devour other fish monsters. In the chaotic fight, it is unknown how many water monsters died. As more and more water monsters died, the blood in the vicinity was so thick that it was visible to the naked eye, but no water monster dared to approach this place. The ability of water monsters to seek benefits and avoid harm is much stronger than that of humans. In such an abnormal situation, how dare they come? At this time, Li Zhirui also encountered trouble. In the direction he left, he happened to run into a fish monster in the late stage of key training. Roar! The fish monster swung its huge body, raising a huge wave and smashing it towards the ship, while it was hiding in the sea and waiting for an opportunity to move. Daking, Dinglang, Daking, who encountered this situation for the first time, was still a beat late in reaction even with Li Zhirui's reminder. And it was this moment of hesitation that caused the huge wave to hit the ship heavily. Although Daking tried his best to make up for it, the ship was still swept into the huge wave. Li Zhirui calmed down and filled a large amount of spiritual stones into the core of the ship, activating the defensive spiritual light to the strongest. In addition, the ship itself was strong, so it should not be destroyed. At this time, Daking's spell also took effect. The waves gradually subsided, and the huge body of the fish monster was suddenly exposed in front of Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui's 10 fingers were like butterflies flying through flowers. When a little spiritual light appeared at the fingertips, he pointed at the fish monster. The seawater around it was affected by the spell and suddenly condensed into dark blue water ropes, which tied the fish monster tightly. The two ends were pulled by a huge force. The water ropes that seemed to be broken by a struggle were actually very tough and were slowly embedded in the flesh and blood of the fish monster. Roar! The fish monster roared in pain and swung its body wildly, as if trying to break free from the restraints of the water ropes. Li Zhirui gritted his teeth. The power of the water rope technique was not small, and it was even more powerful at the bottom of the sea, but the disadvantages were also obvious. The caster would play a game with the recipient, and the fish monster's frantic struggle to break free caused Li Zhirui to concentrate on dealing with it, and he had no way to do anything else. Daking, Li Zhirui shouted, "Kill it, G." Although Daking had been practicing defense and control spells during this period, his attack spells became much stronger as his magic power became stronger. A water arrow took shape in an instant, piercing the fish monster's head with lightning speed, taking its life. Well done, Li Zhirui praised Daking, and quickly controlled the spell to pull the fish monster out of the sea. He didn't have time to cut its body, so he controlled the ship to leave in the distance. On the way, Li Zhirui and Daking encountered several water monsters, but their strength was not as good as the previous fish monster. With the combined efforts of one man and one turtle, they successfully killed them all. Seeing that it was getting late, Li Zhirui took Daking to a small deserted island, ready to rest for a night and go for training tomorrow. Gee! Daking called out weakly, and the whole turtle looked depressed. Li Zhirui knew at a glance that he was feeling guilty for the battle during the day, and his heart warmed, and he said softly, "Aren't we doing well? And this is the first time, just don't make the same mistake next time, GGG." Daking promised repeatedly that he would never make the same mistake again in the future, and would definitely protect Li Zhirui and would not let him fall into danger again. "Well, I believe you can do it." Then Li Zhirui and Daking summarized today's battle, found out the problems, and tried to solve them. When the two finished summarizing, the sky had completely darkened, and the stars and the moon filled the sky, bringing a little light to the dark night. Li Zhirui touched the increasingly dark blue tortoise shell and muttered, "Why is the color of your tortoise shell getting darker and darker? The Kingsong turtle clan does have a dark blue shell, but the color of Daking is several times darker than that of his fellows. If the ordinary Kingsong turtle is sky blue, then Daking is dark blue." Li Zhirui had asked Daking before, and he didn't feel anything wrong with his body, nor did he feel any other enhancements. Li Zhirui had to treat this situation as a harmless mutation. "You've worked hard today, take a good rest." Li Zhirui activated the first level thick earth formation, and at the same time set up a warning formation a little further away, and then quietly closed his eyes to practice. Roar! About an hour or two later, Li Zhirui suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the monster that was frightened by the warning formation and roared loudly. He originally thought that there were no large creatures on this small deserted island, but he didn't expect that there were not only, but also a black bear monster in the late stage of key training. The black bear was 3 feet tall, with a huge waist and hair standing up like steel needles. Its bloody mouth was full of sharp teeth, and it looked very fierce. Li Zhirui's face suddenly became extremely solemn, because the black bear monster's cultivation was higher than his, and it should have reached the 9th level of key training. Daking, entangle the roots and trap him. Now that there was a thick earth formation, Daking didn't need to defend, so he would try his best to entangle the black bear and give Li Zhirui a chance to attack. Daking felt a breath emitted by the black bear monster, and a trace of fear flashed in his little eyes, but thinking of the promise he had just made, he roared to give himself courage and immediately activated the spell he had practiced countless times. Bang, 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 countless tree roots and grass roots rose from the ground, grabbed the black bear monster, and entangled its limbs and body. Roar! The black bear monster roared to the sky, a black light flashed across its body, and an extremely terrifying force emerged spontaneously, and a large number of roots were torn to pieces and fell to the ground. Fortunately, there were many trees nearby, otherwise, with the huge power of the black bear monster, it would not take long to break free. At the same time, Li Zhirui made hand gestures, but the spell was not cast for a long time. Instead, he activated the Kingmu sword, and a flash of green light flashed, instantly slashing the neck of the black bear monster. Clang! A sound of metal and stone colliding rang out. Not only did Li Zhirui's attack not hurt the opponent, but the huge force completely angered the black bear monster. Its eyes turned red, and with a roar, its body doubled in size. Li Zhirui's eyes were full of horror. Is this really a wild monster? How can there be a spell like gigantism? Li Zhirui did not dare to delay any longer, and the spell in his hand was immediately released. Countless needle rains whistled towards him while the black bear was not completely freed from the restraints. At the same time, a bit of green light also mixed into the rain of needles. This was the first-class magic weapon, the pine needles that Li Zhirui bought from his family. The needle rain may not be able to pierce the black bear monster's fur, but the sharpness of the pine needles is several times that of the needle rain, and it also has the power to break the law. If the black bear monster does not deliberately defend itself, then it will definitely not be able to stop it. By the way, there is another update today. Chapter 46 Reasons. After Li Zhirui learned the needle rain technique, he felt that the most important thing about this method was not its lethality, but the large number of needle rains and the range covered by the needle rains, which was very convenient for integrating into sneak attacks. After discovering this, Li Zhirui tried to integrate the wood pine needles into it as a real killing move, and abandoned the lethality of the needle rain technique to pursue the number of needle rains in order to achieve a better hiding effect. Roar! At first, when the needle rain hit the black bear monster, it did not attract its attention, because it was like tickling it, and it couldn't even break its fur, but it never thought that when it relaxed its vigilance, 9 wood pine needles with the power of breaking the law directly pierced into the flesh and blood of the black bear monster, and one of them even blinded its left eye, causing it to roar in pain and run towards Li Zhirui regardless of anything. Decking, stop it! Although there was a thick earth formation for defense, Li Zhirui did not dare to let the black bear monster pounce directly, otherwise he and Decking would be exposed and it would be more dangerous. Duckwing used several controlled defenses in succession, consuming most of his mana, and had to stop. Fortunately, with Duckwing's unremitting efforts, the black bear monster was trapped in a muddy swamp created by magic 3 feet away from the thick earth formation. This was the only earth magic that Duckwing knew, the other being ground spikes. Looking at the black bear monster struggling frantically in the mud, but sinking deeper and deeper, Li Zhirui's heart, which had been beating wildly, finally calmed down. It's over, Li Zhirui let out a long breath of turbid air, and 36 pine needles broke through the air. Under Li Zhirui's control, they drilled into the black bear monster's body from its mouth and directly crushed its brain. After a fierce battle with the black bear monster, both Li Zhirui and Duckwing consumed a lot of mana. They just put its body into the storage bag and didn't care about it anymore, but took the time to recover their mana to avoid accidents that they could not deal with. Fortunately, there was no more trouble in the second half of the night, and it passed peacefully. The next day, when the sun rose from the sea, Li Zhirui also opened his eyes. He was ready to search the island carefully to find out why the black bear monster stayed here. The area of the island is not large, about 10 miles square, the vegetation is dense, but there are no animals. The largest animal is the mountain rat, which shows that this place is indeed not suitable for large animals to survive. But it also made Li Zhirui more curious, why the black bear monster was on this deserted island, and even regarded this place as a forbidden food. He was just resting on the periphery of the island and was attacked by it. After some searching, Li Zhirui finally found the cave of the black bear monster, a karst cave at the foot of the mountain. Li Zhirui pasted a few defensive talismans on himself, put away the big green, and entered it alone. As soon as he entered, the extremely strong fishy smell almost forced him out. Fortunately, the karst cave was not very deep, and Li Zhirui soon reached the end. When he saw the scene in front of him, He was stunned, and at the same time he understood why the black bear monster stayed on this island. Because the wall in front of Li Zhirui was inlaid with raw spiritual stone ores. There was actually a spiritual stone mine under the ground of this deserted island, where creatures were rare and spiritual energy was thin. Although the black bear monster was not very intelligent, it had the instinct to seek good fortune and avoid danger. It naturally knew that this place was beneficial to it, and its cultivation was probably obtained by swallowing spiritual stones directly. Li Zhirui immediately took out a Kingmu sword and dug out the raw spiritual stone ores with nimble hands and feet. Later, he felt that his speed was too slow, so he released King and asked him to help dig the mines. When Li Zhirui's hands were too tired to lift the Kingmu sword, he had to stop. Looking at the raw ore piled up in front of him, Li Zhirui felt satisfied. According to the standard content of spiritual energy and spiritual stones, there should be more than 3,000 spiritual stones in front of Li Zhirui. Is this a micro-spiritual stone mine? Li Zhirui frowned slightly, but then smiled. It was really human nature to be greedy. He was not satisfied with a vein that could dig out tens of thousands of spiritual stones. Li Zhirui dug for several days in the depths of the cave and harvested more than 14,000 spiritual stones in total. Moreover, the original ore became more and more difficult to dig. On the last day, he and King only dug less than 2,000 spiritual stones together. Let the family mine the remaining spiritual stones. Li Zhirui felt that it was time to end this experience. Judging from the results, this experience was still very successful, harvesting more than 10,000 spiritual stones, but judging from the process, it was very ordinary, because Li Zhirui and King had only 2 serious actual combats in total, and did not meet the expectations before going out. However, the spiritual stone vein is important. These tens of thousands of spiritual stones are a great fortune for the Li family. Li Zhirui did not choose to take a sea ship back to Banyan Island, but used paper cranes to fly in the air, walking and stopping, and finally returned to the family the next day. As soon as he landed, Li Zhirui went to find Li Shiking and told him about his accidental discovery of a micro-spiritual stone vein. Are you sure? Such a big surprise suddenly fell on the Li family, and Li Shiking really couldn't believe it. Hey, I've been digging for several days. You say I'm not sure? As he spoke, he took out a piece of raw stone. Li Shiking didn't care about Li Zhirui's words. After all, this was the spiritual stone mine he discovered. According to the family rules, the opportunities discovered by the clan members do not need to be handed over to the family. I will now gather 20 clan members, led by Shi Lian, and you lead the way. Dig up the spiritual stone mine as soon as possible. Li Shiking is a man of swift action. He started to do it immediately. In less than half a quarter of an hour, all the clan members summoned by Li Shiking came to the main hall and said, Zhirui discovered a miniature spiritual stone mine during his training this time. Now I am summoning you here. He will lead the way and bring back all the spiritual stones in that vein. Everyone's eyes lit up immediately. Although the work of mining is very hard, it is not without benefits. At least if you secretly hide dozens of spiritual stones, as long as it is not too much, no one will pursue it. This matter is not allowed to be leaked to other people. Not even your Taoist partners and children. Otherwise, the clan rules will punish you. Although Li Shiking called all the clan members who were trustworthy, he still had to warn them. Money can move people's hearts. The Li family's current external environment is not very stable. If the news of finding a spiritual stone mine spreads, it may attract more forces to attack the Li family. Even if the Li family stands up and says that it is just a micro vein, not many people will believe it at that time. Yes, everyone promised in unison. Then you prepare some rations and leave tonight, is that okay? A clan member stood up and asked, Clan leader, so many of us suddenly leave the family. How should we explain to other clan members? Especially when family members ask, how should we answer? Just say that I let you try and see if you can get through the trade route to King Shan's Hao. Li Shiking quickly gave an excuse. King Shan's Hao, located in the south of Yunping's Hao, is a more prosperous cultivation world than Yunping's Hao. Some things cannot be concealed too much. The more you conceal them, the more curious people will be. It is better to just lie and deal with it. The extra update I promised you before is here. Chapter 47 Breakthrough. Li Zhirui, like other tribesmen, spent more than a month on the deserted island before he dug out the spiritual stone mine. He even called on his own spiritual beasts to help, otherwise he would have to stay in the cave for another month. But all the hard work was worth it, because they dug out more than 60,000 spiritual stones in total. If this is added to what Li Zhirui had dug before, it would be equivalent to a foundation building pill. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone can get 300 contribution points for this mission. After talking about the reward, Li Zhirui warned again, but I also hope that everyone will keep it a secret after returning and don't tell anyone. Everyone was very excited about this, because in theory, 300 contribution points are equivalent to 300 spiritual stones. Although they cannot be exchanged directly, they can be used to offset when the family purchases spiritual objects such as magic tools, and contribution points can also be exchanged for spells, exercises, etc. in the Sutra Pavilion. After everyone left the cave, Li Zhirui sealed the tunnel to prevent people from discovering that there was once a spiritual stone mine here. The spiritual ship driven by Li Zhirui was extremely fast and returned to Banyan Island in just one day. Let's go back and rest. After Li Zhirui finished speaking, he walked straight to the main hall. The spirit stones in his hand had to be handed over to Li Zhirui as soon as possible. When Li Zhirui heard the number reported by Li Zhirui, he said with surprise, "There are so many spirit stones." Li Zhirui told him an approximate number. In addition, the black bear monster had been in the cave for so many years. It was roughly estimated that this spirit stone mine could dig out about 90,000 spirit stones. This number is not far from the upper limit of a microvein. A little more can be considered a small vein, and a small spirit stone mine can produce medium-grade spirit stones. Although a medium-grade spirit stone is equivalent to 100 low-grade spirit stones, the spiritual energy it contains is more peaceful and pure, which is incomparable to low-grade spirit stones. Moreover, there are many uses for medium-grade spirit stones, such as arranging a stronger formation and using it as the core of a puppet. Most importantly, medium-grade spirit stones are indispensable for promotion to high-level spirit veins. Unfortunately, this spiritual vein is a little bit off, or it may be that it was destroyed by the black bear demon before it was fully nurtured, causing the spiritual energy of the mineral vein to leak out and stop at the microvein. Thinking of this, Li Zhirui's excited mood suddenly calmed down. What a pity. After everyone said goodbye to each other and left, Li Zhirui hurriedly ran back to the small courtyard, closed the door, and flashed into the space. For more than a month, Li Zhirui couldn't stay in the space for too long. He could only borrow the time to relax and hurriedly take care of various spiritual medicines. Fortunately, the space has its own magical features. Although it is not as vibrant as Li Zhirui's careful care, at least the spiritual medicine is still healthy, without withering, yellowing leaves, etc. Li Zhirui is like an old farmer in the field, skillfully and carefully tending to many spiritual medicines, while Daking is eating spiritual fruits on the side. A few hours later, Li Zhirui stretched himself and walked in front of Daking, only to find that he had fallen asleep. He had wanted to play with him, but now he could only give up and quietly leave the space. Li Zhirui had a good rest for a day. From the next day, he returned to his previous boring life of refining pills and practicing. One day, when Li Zhirui was practicing, he suddenly heard a slight cracking sound in his body. He suddenly understood and began to speed up the operation of the exercises. The spiritual energy scattered everywhere in the outside world began to gather around him, forming a layer of spiritual light visible to the naked eye. It has been more than a year since Li Zhirui's last breakthrough. In fact, with Li Zhirui's qualifications and the assistance of a large number of spiritual pills, he should have broken through long ago. The reason for the postponement to today is that Li Zhirui spent a lot of time on refining pills, and he also practiced visualization, went to experience, and mind. However, these things are not without benefits for Li Zhirui. For example, this breakthrough is the reward for his hard work during this period. Li Zhirui mobilized his consciousness and absorbed the spiritual energy that lingered around him into his body. After being tempered by the meridians, when the spiritual energy reached the Danshan, it had already become his magic power. In the key training period, the focus is on the word training. By tempering the spiritual energy, it is transformed into magic power, and then impacting the Danshan barrier, expanding the area of the Danshan Qi, and thus breaking through the realm. Li Zhirui's breakthrough this time, the Danshan barrier has long been broken through invisibly, and he does not need to do it again. When he absorbs enough spiritual energy and fills the Qi with magic power, Li Zhirui will be considered to have successfully broken through the 8th level of Qi training. In order to consolidate his realm, Li Zhirui closed himself off for half a month before leaving the quiet room for cultivation. As soon as he came out, He saw several communication talismans posted on the door. Li Zhirui took them down one by one. Among them, Li Zhirui kept two, with roughly the same content, asking what he was doing and whether he had Julingdon in his hand. Then Li Zhirui left two cards. One was for him and Li Zhirui to take charge of the market, and the other was for him to ask if you had made a breakthrough. If so, remember to report the good news to him. Li Zhirui was not on the Banyan Island, so Li Zhirui had to go to find Li Zhirui. As soon as he saw Li Zhirui, he said loudly, "You kid, have you made a breakthrough recently?" "Well, I felt something when I was practicing, and then I just closed my eyes and made a breakthrough. As soon as I came out of the closed eyes today, I saw the communication talisman you left behind, so I hurried over to find you," Li Zhirui explained with a flattering look. "Forget it, you are excusable." Li Zhirui's breakthrough was a great joy, and Li Zhirui didn't say much, but now there was an urgent need for Julingdon, and it might be too late for Li Zhirui to refine it now. He could only hope that he still had a lot of elixirs in his hands. "I don't have many jade spirit pills left. I only have a few hundred pills I refined before I went into seclusion. It should be enough for a day or two." Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui embarrassedly and said, "I'll have to trouble you next." Li Zhirui keenly noticed that something was wrong and asked, "Has anything happened in the family recently?" "It's not a big deal. Didn't I say before that other forces are already selling water-refined pills?" Li Zhirui sighed and said, "They took advantage of the fact that the family couldn't produce enough elixirs and swallowed up a lot of the market." Li Zhirui then smiled and said, "The quality of my Li family's elixirs is the best. As long as there are enough elixirs, we can definitely get the business back." "You're right." Li Zhirui nodded affirmatively. He still held the kitty and Junyangdanju in his hands. If he used these two elixir techniques to refine jade spirit pills, the business would naturally come back. Li Zhirui suddenly said, "If you have nothing to do, go to the main hall and tell the clan leader about your breakthrough, and make him happy." "Okay." Li Zhirui originally had no such plan. After all, it was just a breakthrough in a small realm, and there was no need to make it known to everyone. However, after hearing what Li Zhirui said, Li Zhirui knew that the clan leader was also worried about the loss of business in the store these days. Although he had thought it through before, he still felt irritated when things really happened to him. Thank you for the tip from Zhizulao. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 48 Storm. On an island located tens of thousands of miles east of Banyan Island and close to the open sea, hundreds of bandit cultivators gathered here, listening to the promises made to them by the 8 foundation building cultivators in the front. "We are also cultivators who possess power, but why don't those blessed mountains and various resources belong to us? Is it because we are not strong enough?" A cultivator in the late stage of foundation building shouted. No. It's because we are not united enough and our strength is too dispersed. Unlike those sects or families, we cannot gather everyone's strength, but now, I, Cao Bai, and 7 other fellow Taoists will lead you to establish a force for loose cultivators to resist the suppression of those forces on us. Maybe now, this force only has us, but as our fame spreads, more and more cultivators will surely join us. By then, we will become an extremely large force that no one dares to ignore. By then, we don't have to be servile to those sect disciples and family members. We can stand up and communicate with them on an equal footing, because we have the Loose Cultivator Alliance as our backing." Loose Cultivator Alliance, an overwhelming cheer resounded through the sky and continued to spread across the island. All the cultivators' eyes revealed a hint of fanaticism and longing. They really hoped that they could see the scene described by Cao Bai. As they were originally independent cultivators, they knew the hardships and difficulties of independent cultivators very well, otherwise they would not have become bandit cultivators. Now that they have the opportunity to change their fate, they naturally don't want to live such a life anymore, let alone their descendants. Cao Bai looked at the hundreds of enthusiastic key training bandit cultivators below, and a bright smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, but deep in his eyes was ambition. The other 7 foundation building cultivators were also very happy. They went from being alone to being able to mobilize so many cultivators. They felt extremely satisfied in their hearts. How could they not be happy? In order to make our name known and attract more Taoists to join us, we have to do something shocking. Cao Bai's eyes flashed with cruelty, and he said murderously, "We have to destroy the 4 families of Zhang, He, Zhang, and Li, occupy their sacred mountains, and use them as the base of our Loose Cultivator Alliance, and only in this way can we recruit more Taoists, otherwise we can't expand the scale of the alliance without a sacred land." Cao Bai's words were like pouring a bucket of ice water on everyone's heads, calming everyone down, and some even wanted to retreat. Even the 7 foundation building cultivators looked at Cao Bai in disbelief. They didn't expect Cao Bai to be so crazy that he wanted to destroy the 4 foundation building families in one move. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, Cao Bai smiled disapprovingly and said, but do you think the strength of these families is really that strong? Perhaps you don't know that there are only 2 foundation building cultivators in the Jing, He, and Zhang families now. With our strength, we can easily defeat them. At the beginning, the news that the 3 families had foundation building cultivators died was spread by the Li family on a small scale. Perhaps many people did not believe it, but after such a long time, the 3 foundation building cultivators have not appeared again. Many people have already believed this rumor. Of course, as a casual cultivator, Cao Bai does not have such great power to know such news, but someone wants to use him to eliminate these foundation building families, so naturally they will not hide such important news from him. Then why add the Li family? A foundation building cultivator asked puzzledly. It is rumored that the Li family has 4 foundation building cultivators. Even if the other 3 families only have 2 foundation building cultivators, they add up to more than us, not to mention that the clans of the 4 major families have arranged island protection formations. If they want to break through the formation, their strength must be at least 20% to 30% higher than that of the other party. The Li family is very powerful, but it is not without its weak moments. Cao Bai's ambitions are not small, but he is not a fool. Since he dared to add the Li family, he naturally had his considerations. Among the 4 foundation building cultivators of the Li family, there must be one in the market. At the same time, they will send a foundation building cultivator to the market every once in a while to settle accounts and hand over. If we take action at this time, there will still be only 2 foundation building cultivators on the Banyan Island. Seeing that their opposition attitude was no longer firm, Cao Bai tempted them again. You should know that in Yunqing Market, Yunchang Building and Li's grocery store are both Li's businesses, right? Then do you know how many spirit stones these 2 stores earn for the Li family every month? At least 3,000 spirit stones. Cao Bai showed a trace of greed in his eyes, and said, last month, a caravan passed by and ordered 3,000 jade spirit pails from the Li family, and this business alone earned 9,000 spirit stones. This time, most of the cultivators changed sides in the face of huge benefits, and no one questioned or opposed why they wanted to attack the Li family. Seeing this, Cao Bai threw out another heavy bomb, and I will invite 2 fellow Daoists to join us. By then, we will have 10 foundation building cultivators, and these 4 families can't stop us. Long live the Loose Cultivator Alliance. I don't know who suddenly shouted, and in the end, hundreds of cultivators on the island were all shouting. Everyone was caught up in the beautiful future described by Cao Bai, but no one thought about what the master of Yunping's Hao, Yuan Mingzong, would think of them. Cao Bai, the only one who remembered this, naturally wouldn't say it, otherwise the people he had finally gathered together would fall apart immediately. As for what will happen to these cultivators after the matter is accomplished, what does it have to do with him, Cao Bai? The Li family, who didn't know that the crisis was coming, was still in peace. Under a barren mountain in the north of the Banyan Island, Li Zhirui and Decking worked hard to exercise their own strength. After this period of unremitting efforts, the strength of 1 person and 1 turtle has made considerable progress. A sound of a branch being stepped on suddenly sounded. Li Zhirui turned around with a sharp gaze, only to see Li Zhixuan standing there at a loss. It had been a year since Li Zhirui last saw her, and she had not changed much. Li Zhirui immediately restrained his momentum, walked up to her and asked, "Why are you here?" Although the family did not restrict these clansmen who had not yet practiced to leave Linghuan, it was indeed a bit strange for such a child to run to the barren mountains. "I heard that the sword is a killing weapon, and I want to hone my swordsmanship in fighting." Li Zhixuan's little face was full of seriousness. The Banyan Island is very large. In addition to the place where the secular clansmen live, there are wild beasts in other places, but there are no large wild beasts. Li Zhirui smiled slightly and asked, "You are still too young. It may not be easy to swing the iron sword behind you, and have you practiced the basic swordsmanship?" Li Zhixuan did not speak, but looked at Li Zhirui stubbornly. Although he was a cultivator and a well-known genius in the family, Li Zhixuan did not want to give in. "It seems that you are not convinced." Li Zhirui smiled indifferently and said, "In that case, let's have a sword fight. How about it? If I win, you will go back and continue to learn basic swordsmanship. If you win, when you break through the first level of key training, I will give you 10 bottles of Yulingdan and this King Mu sword. How about it? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Tiger Head. Li Zhirui was very tempted. Although she had not started practicing yet, she knew the effect of the Jade Spirit Pill and knew that her aptitude was not good and she needed a lot of resources to speed up her practice. But you have mana, Li Zhirui suddenly said. Li Zhirui chuckled and said, I can seal my mana to compete with you, and I can only use the basic swordsmanship taught by Linghu Academy, but you can use any swordsmanship you have learned. Li Zhirui did not have the idea of traveling the world with a sword, so after leaving Linghu Academy, he did not practice swordsmanship again. But in essence, this is still an unfair competition, because as an adult male, Li Zhirui is stronger than Li Zhirui in both physical strength and power. What's more, even if Li Zhirui's body is not tempered like a physical cultivator, it will naturally be nourished by spiritual energy when practicing. Although Li Zhirui is smart, she is still young after all and does not know much about the affairs of cultivators. She just thinks that what Li Zhirui said makes sense, so she nodded and agreed. Li Zhirui only had a King Mu sword in his hand, but using the King Mu sword would be too bullying, so he used his magic power to make a temporary wooden sword. Come on, Li Zhirui's opening move was quite decent. After all, he had practiced basic swordsmanship for 3 years. Li Zhirui was like a cheetah in the jungle. He ran to Li Zhirui nimbly, kicked his feet, took advantage of the momentum to rise into the air, and chopped down Li Zhirui's head with his sword tightly held in both hands. Li Zhirui raised his hand calmly, and his wrist shook slightly. The wooden sword suddenly changed direction and deflected Li Zhirui's attack from the side. She fell to the ground in embarrassment. You want to win so much that you forget your advantages, Li Zhirui said with some disappointment. Li Zhirui felt the disappointment and suddenly felt that she had fallen into an ice cave. The lingering coldness froze her whole body stiff. She didn't want to disappoint Brother Jiu. She didn't want to disappoint the person who brought a ray of light to her dark world. Li Zhirui forced herself to calm down and held the iron sword to look for Li Zhirui's flaws. But Li Zhirui just stood there motionless, holding the wooden sword calmly, waiting for Li Zhirui's attack. Li Zhirui knew she couldn't wait any longer, so she shouted and rushed towards Li Zhirui with all her strength. Li Zhirui frowned slightly, looking at the impulsive Li Zhirui. He even doubted whether he had made a mistake in the spirit testing formation. He sighed in his heart, but his hands moved quickly. The seemingly fragile wooden sword blocked all the directions for Li Zhirui to move forward. Li Zhirui, who was running, saw this scene, and was not surprised but happy. As if she didn't see it, she rushed straight towards the wooden sword, then turned her body, endured the severe pain in her ankle, rolled into the defensive circle, and stabbed Li Zhirui's thigh with the iron sword. Buzz! At the critical moment, Li Zhirui used his magic power to block Li Zhirui's attack. You girl, Li Zhirui didn't say much, just said, you won this competition. When you break through the first level of key training, I will give you what I promised. Hearing Li Zhirui's words, Li Zhirui's usually cold face showed a bright smile. Are you so happy? Li Zhirui walked in front of her and used his magic power to clear her swollen ankle. Li Zhirui nodded affirmatively and said, yes. I didn't disappoint Brother Jiu? Li Zhirui was slightly stunned. It's not that no one has called him Brother Jiu, but the Brother Jiu in Li Zhirui's mouth is full of admiration and respect. You did a good job, Li Zhirui smiled and said, let's go, I'll take you back to Linghuan. Li Zhirui carried Li Zhirui on his spiritual crane, and he used the wind control technique to glide at low altitude. Zhirui, the most taboo in cultivation is to act impulsively and to do too much. In front of the Linghuan, Li Zhirui left a message to Li Zhirui again, and this time, she could understand the general meaning. But when Li Zhirui came to his senses, Li Zhirui had already left Linghuan on a paper crane. In the following time, Li Zhirui would practice at the foot of the barren mountain every day, but he did not meet anyone else. One day, it happened to be the day when Li Shiding and Li Shiren took over. Li Zhirui came to the barren mountain as usual, but not long after, he suddenly found a few small black dots on the sea in the distance. At first, Li Zhirui didn't care, just thinking that they were passing sea merchants, But when they got closer and closer to the Daring Island, and he saw clearly that there were a large number of monks standing on the ship, he suddenly felt a little uneasy. Li Zhirui hurriedly put decking into the space and ran quickly towards the family residence. Because the sea ship was getting closer and closer to the Daring Island, he was afraid of being discovered, so he didn't dare to fly in the air, and could only try his best to perform the wind control technique. Fortunately, the journey was not far. In less than half an hour, Li Zhirui, who was out of breath, ran to Li Shiking and said, "Chief, it's bad. There are several ships full of monks on the sea, heading to Daring Island." "What did you say?" Li Shiking stood up suddenly, but he knew that Li Zhirui was not a person who shot at nothing. Without saying a word, he rang the bronze bell in front of the door and urgently summoned all the tribesmen to come. Damn it! Today is the day when Xu Ren and Shi Ting will take over. These people came at the right time. Li Shiking was furious, but under his anger there was a trace of worry. Li Zhirui was stunned. He had been practicing magic with decking these days and had forgotten about it. "Second brother, why did you suddenly summon all the tribesmen?" Li Shilian asked with a puzzled look on his face, and the tribesmen behind him looked at Li Shiking one after another. Li Shiking took a deep breath and said, "Zhirui discovered that a large number of cultivators from the north are heading to the Banyan Island. Everyone, be prepared for battle." The tribesmen, who had never encountered such a thing, immediately fell into panic, and were all terrified. "Quiet," Li Shiking shouted, "there is nothing to be afraid of. We have a large formation to protect the island and spirit beasts to help us defend against the enemy. They are definitely not our opponents." Li Shiking's words and his prestige made the tribesmen regain their reason and no longer fear the unknown war. However, if you observe carefully, you will still find their uneasiness and worries. Just as many members of the Li family were preparing, the bandit cultivators who took a detour to the north were getting closer and closer to the Banyan Island. "Brother Cao Dao, do you think the three of us can take down the Li family?" another foundation-building cultivator asked somewhat uneasily. Although Cao Bai had put on an appearance of looking down on the Li family in front of everyone before, when he was allocating the foundation-building cultivators to attack the four families, he still invested a lot of strength in the Li family's front line. Including him, there were 3 foundation-building cultivators, and except for him who was in the late stage of foundation building, the other 2 were in the middle stage of foundation building. In addition, the number of key cultivating cultivators assigned was also the largest and the strongest. Of course. Don't you all know that there are only 2 foundation-building cultivators on the Banyan Island now? No matter what Cao Bai thought in his heart, his face was always full of confidence. Maybe Cao Bai's acting skills were too good, and until now no one noticed a trace of worry in the depths of his eyes. It is said that cultivators sometimes have a whim, and when he was about to attack, he felt a little uneasy in his heart. It's just that the wealth of the Li family made him more excited, and in the end greed overwhelmed that uneasiness, and he took the initiative to lead the team to the Li family. "It's almost there. Everyone get ready. As long as we take down the Banyan Island, then the huge amount of wealth of the Li family will belong to us," Cao Bai encouraged everyone loudly. "Thank you for your support." Chapter 50, Snake Tail. When Cao Bai was boosting morale, he didn't notice that above their heads, there was a spirit eagle spinning non-stop, with sharp eyes that penetrated a distance and fell on everyone. On the Banyan Island, the spirit eagle's contractor was watching this scene through his companion's eyes through a secret method. There are 3 foundation building cultivators on the ship, one of whom is in the late stage of foundation building, and the other 2 are in the middle stage of foundation building. The number of key training cultivators exceeds 100, and they are all at least in the middle stage of key training. As he introduced, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. Although this force was very strong, it was not so strong that they felt they could not match it. The Li family has a total of more than 70 cultivators, including 25 in the late stage of key training, 38 in the middle stage of key training, and the rest are the zigzag generation of the family who have just started practicing, are still hovering in the early stage of key training, or who have not yet started practicing. Don't take it lightly, every member of the family is very precious. Since we have the right time, place, and people, we should try our best to ensure that there are no casualties, Li Shiking said with a serious face. They are only 10 miles away from the Banyan Island, the Spirit Eagle's contractor suddenly said. Li Shiking immediately gave the order, send the order, let all the tribesmen who have contracted earth and wood spirit beasts set up a lot of traps on the way to the tribe land, and then hurry back, After they get out of the trap, all the tribesmen and spirit beasts will cast attack spells on them. After these 2 waves of attacks, they should come to the formation and confront the Li family cultivators head-on. However, Li Shiking believed that these 2 waves of attacks alone were enough to knock down their morale and take many lives. Time passed bit by bit, and the atmosphere in the main hall became more and more solemn, until screams and wails came from afar, and everyone showed a smile on their faces. Li Zhirui was also in the team that set the traps. Deking's various wood-based spells brought a heavy lesson to these uninformed casual cultivators. Of course, among all the tribesmen, Li Shilian's stone ape was the most lethal one. The stone spear comparable to fine iron could pierce even a first-level defense talisman. However, this ambush did not cause much harm to the foundation-building monks. With their powerful strength and the ability to temporarily stay in the air, these traps could not hurt them at all. Damn it! They have discovered our whereabouts a long time ago. Looking at the large number of casualties of the key cultivating monks, Cao Bai showed a trace of fear in his eyes. But before they could react, Li Shilian led the tribesmen back, and those monks did not see them at all. Be careful, there must be other traps on this road. Seeing that the spells were no longer falling, Cao Bai felt relieved and reminded loudly. Next, all the monks walked carefully on the mountain road, using their spiritual sense to explore the road from time to time to ensure that they would not fall into the trap. It took more than an hour for them to finish this journey of less than 30 miles. But before they could breathe a sigh of relief, one by one, the Li family monks suddenly appeared, followed by hundreds of spells. Sharp golden light, roaring fireballs, heavy boulders, all kinds of spells formed an unstoppable torrent, which seemed to swallow up all the invaders. Save me. Senior Cao Bai, save me. The few casual cultivators standing at the front of the team wailed in pain. In just a moment, they became a broken corpse. Such a horrible scene made everyone feel cold in their hearts. For a while, many people stood there in a daze, motionless, until the torrent of magic swallowed them up. The severe pain made them wake up, but it was too late. No one could save them. Everyone, cast defensive spells for me. Cao Bai's voice could no longer hide his fear. It was not that he was afraid of this torrent of magic, but he saw Li Shiking and Li Shilian standing in front of the crowd, and the 2 foundation-building spirit beasts beside them. Of course, in addition to the blue-eyed tiger and the stone ape, the other Li family cultivators also had spirit beasts with similar cultivation levels. Why doesn't anyone know that the Li family is actually a beast-controlling family? A foundation-building cultivator said with a dazed look on his face. No one could answer his question, because no one knew that the Li family was hiding such a big secret. Run! Someone suddenly shouted. The frightened cultivators turned around and ran away, as if they saw a glimmer of hope in a desperate situation. Among all the cultivators, the foundation-building cultivators led by Cao Bai ran the fastest. They stepped on a spiritual sword and flew several miles away in the blink of an eye. Clan leader, should we chase them and kill them all? Many clan members were eager to make a move. Although these cultivators might not be very rich, they would have some spiritual stones, right? Just chase them behind them. If they were really forced to death, they would probably drag several Li family members to death before they died, which was something Li Shiking didn't want to see. Follow them and drive all the cultivators out of the Banyan Island, Li Shiking ordered. Fortunately, there were few secular people on the Banyan Island, and there were no mortals living in the relatively desolate north, otherwise these people would be in trouble. Driven by the Li family, the cultivators forgot that there were traps on the road, so that many people died when they fled. In the end, there were only less than 50 independent cultivators who escaped from the Banyan Island. It only took a few hours for the number of people to go from more than 100 people who were full of confidence to more than 40 people who were dejected. Second brother, why don't you kill them all? There is no need for the clan members to take action. You and I can deal with these independent cultivators. Li Shilian's face was full of confusion. Li Shiking said lightly, who said I would let them go? Although it is almost impossible for these independent cultivators to produce a foundation-building cultivator, what if? If you don't kill the snake, you will suffer from it. Li Shiking can't leave a hidden danger for the family. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Did you let them leave? Li Zhirui understood what Li Shiking meant and guessed, Patriarch, you let them go before, worried that they would cause damage to the island, but now that they have left a Banyan Island and are on the vast ocean, Li Shiking naturally has no such concerns. Let's go, you and I will go and deal with them. Li Shiking said to Li Shilian. Two foundation-building monks took an elder in the late stage of key training and flew into the sky in a spirit boat. In just a moment, they caught up with a ship that had not gone far. Boom! Two extremely powerful spells fell from the sky, and the ship, which was only one level, was instantly smashed into pieces. Some lucky independent cultivators did not die in this attack, but they were seriously injured and had no hope of survival in the vast ocean. Li Shiking and Li Shilian searched the sea for a while, and after not seeing any survivors, they returned to Banyan Island with a rich harvest. You should understand from the chapter title that this is a transition chapter, right? Thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.